In this video, I'll be explaining the entire timeline of Dragon Age in chronological order, covering everything from the primordial creation of the world itself all the way through to the events of Dragon Age, Inquisition, and beyond. We'll be walking through the major games in the series, including Dragon Age, Origins, Origins Awakening, Dragon Age 2, and Dragon Age Inquisition, along with the critical historical eras that shaped the world of Thedas, from the ancient elven empire of Elvenan to the rise and fall of the Tevinter Imperium, the blights that nearly destroyed civilization, and the religious conflicts that defined entire ages. This timeline focuses on major in-universe events and games, excluding most novels, comics, and minor lore entries for brevity, because while those supplementary materials add wonderful depth to the world, including every single piece of extended media would make this video impossibly long and would distract from the core narrative thread that connects the games themselves. As always, throughout the video, there will be a timeline animation at the bottom of the screen, so you can easily follow along and understand exactly when each event takes place, which is especially important in a franchise like Dragon Age, where the history spans thousands of years and multiple overlapping calendars and naming conventions that can get confusing if you're not keeping track of where you are in the chronology. Now, before we dive into the specifics, here's something that really puts the scale of this universe into perspective. The very first Dragon Age event, the creation of the Fade, predates the existence of even the ancient elven gods by an unimaginable span, setting the stage for all of reality and everything that happens in every single game, every conflict, every magical phenomenon, every demon encounter, every spirit interaction. All of it traces back to that singular moment when the Fade came into being and fundamentally shaped what was possible in the physical world. But before we get to any of that, we need to explain the setting first, because Dragon Age operates on a very specific cosmology that's different from most fantasy universes, and if you don't understand the basic rules of how this world works, how magic functions, what the Fade actually is, and why it matters, then a lot of the timeline's most important events simply won't make sense. Long before the ages we know, before history itself could be recorded or remembered, before the first mortal drew breath or the first civilization rose from the dust, there existed only the Maker. According to the Chantry, the dominant religious institution of Thedas, the Maker dwelt alone in the void, a being of infinite power and creativity with no outlet for either. In this primordial time before time, the Maker's first act of creation was not the solid earth or the bright sky, but something altogether more ethereal. The Maker brought into being the Fade, a realm of raw magic and possibility, a place where thought and reality were one and the same. The Fade existed as pure potential, a canvas of dreams and ideas given form through will alone. It was a realm without physical laws, without the constraints of matter or mortality, where concepts themselves could take shape and walk as living things. The Fade was not merely empty space waiting to be filled. As the Maker continued the work of creation, this realm of dreams began to develop its own character, its own strange geography. The Fade became a reflection, a mirror of what would come next. When the Maker turned attention to crafting the physical world, the world we know as Thedas, the Fade responded, echoing and mirroring the material realm in its own impossible way. Mountains in the physical world cast shadows of themselves in the Fade, though these shadow mountains might shift and change with the dreams of those who saw them. Rivers in Thedas flowed as streams of memory and emotion in the Fade. Every rock, every tree, every living thing that would eventually populate the material world left an impression in this realm of spirits, creating a distorted reflection that was both familiar and utterly alien. Thedas itself, in those earliest moments of creation, was far from the world of kingdoms and conflicts we see in the Dragon Age. The physical world began as something formless, a churning chaos of raw elements without structure or purpose. There was matter, certainly, but it existed in a state of pure disorder. The Maker, working with the patience of eternity, began the long process of imposing order on this chaos. Divine hands, at least according to the teachings of the Chantry, shaped the formless matter into something recognizable. The Maker raised up mountains from the churning mass, great peaks that would one day be named the Frostback Mountains, the Vimark Mountains, and the Hunterhorn Range. The Maker carved out basins that would become the Great Oceans, the Amaranthine Ocean to the east and the vast waters surrounding the continents. Landmasses were separated and defined, creating the continents and islands that would host countless civilizations over the millennia to come. The shaping of Thedas was not merely an act of physical arrangement. The Maker imbued the world with potential, with the capacity for life and growth. Fertile soil was laid down in valleys, water was set to flow in rivers and streams, carving paths through stone and nourishing the land. The climate was established, with warm southern regions and cold northern reaches, with patterns of wind and weather that would shape the development of everything that followed. This was a world being prepared, a stage being set for the drama of existence to unfold upon it. As the physical world took shape, the Fade continued to evolve alongside it. The realm of dreams became populated with beings born from the very act of creation itself. Spirits came into existence, entities that embodied pure concepts and ideas. These were not the twisted demons that would later plague mortals, but beings of genuine purity, each one the living incarnation of an abstract principle. Spirits of valor walked the Fade, embodying courage and heroism in their purest forms. Spirits of wisdom contemplated the nature of knowledge and understanding. Spirits of justice represented fairness and righteousness without the corruption of mortal interpretation. There were spirits of compassion, feeling the echoes of suffering and the desire to heal. Spirits of faith embodied belief itself, pure and untainted by dogma or doubt. Spirits of hope carried the promise of better things to come. Spirits of purpose understood direction and meaning. Each spirit was a fragment of the fundamental forces that would drive mortal existence, though mortals themselves did not yet exist to experience them. These spirits were the first true inhabitants of the Fade, and they were unlike anything that would come after. They existed in a state of innocence, experiencing their nature without the complexity that mortal emotion would later bring. A spirit of valor knew only courage, had never experienced fear or cowardice, and therefore existed as a perfect expression of bravery. A spirit of wisdom sought knowledge for its own sake, without ambition or the desire for power that would later corrupt such pursuits. The spirits moved through the Fade in patterns that reflected their nature, drawn to places and moments that resonated with their essential being. They were, in many ways, the Maker's first children, though they were children of thought rather than flesh. When the Maker created the first living beings on Thedas, the exact nature of these creatures remains shrouded in mystery and theological debate. The Chantry teaches that the Maker created life in stages, beginning with the simplest forms and building toward greater complexity. Some scholars believe these first living things were plants, green growing things that could draw sustenance from soil and sun. Others argue that the first life must have been even simpler, organisms too small to see that prepared the way for everything else. What is known, or at least widely believed, is that these first living beings were not yet the thinking, dreaming creatures that would later define Thedas. They were alive, certainly, but they did not yet possess the consciousness that would allow them to truly interact with the Fade in meaningful ways. In these primordial days, the barrier between the Fade and the physical world was nothing like the solid wall it would later become. The veil, as this barrier is known, was thin to the point of transparency, permeable and easily crossed. The separation between dream and reality was more suggestion than law. Spirits could pass from the Fade into Thedas with barely any effort at all, manifesting in the physical world as easily as a thought becomes a word. They walked the newly formed mountains and valleys, experiencing the physical realm with curiosity and wonder. A spirit of valor might manifest near a waterfall, drawn by the courage it took for water to leap from great heights. A spirit of wisdom might appear in a quiet grove, contemplating the patterns of growing things. The early inhabitants of Thedas, as they developed consciousness and awareness, found themselves living in a world where the boundary between thought and reality was gossamer thin. These beings, whatever their exact nature, had direct and frequent contact with spirits. There was no fear in these interactions, no understanding that such contact might be dangerous. Spirits were simply part of the world, as natural as rain or wind. A conscious being might fall asleep and find themselves walking in the Fade, conversing with spirits as easily as they might speak to a physical companion. They might wake to find a spirit standing beside them, curious about the physical sensations that mortals experienced. The exchange flowed both ways, with spirits learning about the physical world and physical beings learning about the nature of concepts and ideas made manifest. But this age of innocence could not last forever. As conscious beings developed more complex emotions, as they began to experience not just simple awareness but the full range of mortal feeling, the Fade began to change in response. Not all spirits, however, remain benevolent. In the ever-shifting currents of the Fade, where thought and emotion shape reality itself, a darker transformation begins to take hold. Demons emerge, entities that embody negative concepts like rage, desire, pride, and sloth. These are not separate creations, but rather corrupted versions of the spirits that once drifted peacefully through the Fade's endless expanse. A spirit of purpose might twist into a demon of pride. A spirit of love can warp into a demon of desire. The very nature of the Fade, responsive as it is to emotion and thought, means that negative feelings and dark impulses can fundamentally alter a spirit's essence, turning what was once a reflection of hope or curiosity into something predatory and dangerous. These demons feed on mortal fears, on the anxieties and terrors that radiate from living beings in the physical world below. Where benevolent spirits are drawn to positive emotions and seek to understand or emulate them, demons hunger for the darker spectrum of mortal experience. They are attracted to pain, to anguish, to the raw wounds of trauma and loss. A demon of rage seeks out anger and violence, growing stronger in the presence of fury and bloodshed. A demon of desire latches onto mortal wants and cravings, the things people yearn for so desperately that they would sacrifice anything to obtain them. Sloth demons are drawn to despair and apathy, to the exhaustion of those who have given up hope. Each demon is both a reflection and an amplifier of these negative states, creating a feedback loop that strengthens the demon while deepening the mortal's suffering. The first demons to emerge represent a fundamental corruption of the Fade's original nature, where once the realm of dreams was purely a mirror of thought and imagination, now it contains entities with their own malevolent agency. These demons are not content to simply observe or reflect. They actively seek to influence, to manipulate, to cross into the physical world and wreak havoc upon the living. The transformation from spirit to demon is not always instantaneous or complete. Some spirits hover in a liminal state, their nature uncertain, capable of shifting between benevolence and malice depending on the emotions they encounter. Others fall completely into corruption, becoming so thoroughly twisted that no trace of their original essence remains. With both spirits and demons now inhabiting the Fade, and with the veil between worlds still thin and permeable, the constant intermingling of Fade and physical reality blurs the lines between what is real and what is imagined. In this primordial age, the physical world is not yet fully solidified into the fixed laws that will later govern it. Magic flows freely from the Fade into Thedas, and the dreams and nightmares of living beings ripple back into the Fade, shaping its landscape in turn. A mortal creature might dream of a great forest, and that forest could manifest in the Fade as a real location, complete with trees that whisper secrets and paths that lead to memories. Conversely, a powerful spirit or demon in the Fade might reach across the thin veil and alter the physical world, causing stones to float, water to flow upward, or creatures to spontaneously transform. This blurring of boundaries means that early Thedas is a place of profound instability and wonder. The laws of nature are suggestions rather than rules. Cause and effect do not always follow predictable patterns. A being might fall asleep in one location and wake in another, having physically traveled during their dreams. The dead might linger as spirits, unable or unwilling to fully depart. Thoughts could take on physical form, and emotions could reshape the landscape. It is a world where imagination and reality are so intertwined that separating them becomes nearly impossible. Throughout all of this, the Maker observes. According to Chantry teachings, which draw on the oldest fragments of belief and myth, the Maker watches the unfolding of creation with interest and concern. The Golden City stands at the heart of the Fade, a place of perfect beauty and divine presence, and from this vantage point, the Maker sees how the two realms interact. The Maker witnesses the spirits in their innocence and their corruption. The Maker observes the first stirrings of life in the physical world, the creatures that crawl and swim and fly, all of them touched by the magic that seeps through from the Fade. The Maker sees the harmony that exists in some moments and the discord that erupts in others. The Fade itself is a place of raw, unfiltered magic. It is the source from which all magical energy flows, the wellspring of power that will later be harnessed by mages and feared by those without the gift. In this primordial era, magic is not something that must be studied or controlled. It simply is, as fundamental to existence as air or water. The Fade's magic directly influences the physical world in countless ways. It causes mutations in living creatures, giving rise to forms that could never evolve through natural selection alone. It creates pockets of reality where time moves differently, where a moment might last a year or a century might pass in a heartbeat. It allows for the impossible to become possible, for miracles and horrors to manifest with equal ease. Early life on Thedas is profoundly shaped by these magical energies. The first creatures to emerge in the physical world are not purely material beings. They carry within them traces of the Fade, fragments of spiritual essence that make them more than simple animals. Some possess a rudimentary connection to magic, able to sense the presence of spirits or even to instinctively channel magical energy for protection or hunting. Others are more dramatically altered, becoming creatures that exist partially in both realms at once, their bodies solid, but their minds touching the Fade. The diversity of life in this early period is staggering, as magic allows for forms and functions that defy later biological constraints. Plants, too, are influenced by the Fade's presence. Certain flora develops properties that blur the line between the mundane and the magical. Trees might grow in impossible configurations, their roots reaching into the Fade as surely as into the soil. Flowers could bloom with petals that shift color based on the emotions of those nearby. Fungi might spring up overnight in places where the veil is particularly thin, feeding on the magical energy that leaks through. The entire ecosystem of early Thedas is one where magic is not an exception but an integral component of life itself. According to the theological understanding preserved by the Chantry, the Maker's initial intent for these two realms is for them to exist in harmony. The Fade and the physical world are meant to complement each other, each enriching the other. The Fade provides magic, imagination, and spiritual depth. The physical world offers structure, consequence, and the beauty of finite existence. Together they create a reality more complete than either could achieve alone. The thin veil between them is not a flaw, but a feature, allowing for the free exchange of energy and influence that makes both realms vibrant and alive. Yet the emergence of demons introduces discord and danger into this nascent world. The harmony that might have been is threatened by entities that seek only to corrupt and destroy. Demons do not contribute to the balance between realms. Instead, they exploit the permeability of the veil to spread suffering. They whisper to mortals in their dreams, planting seeds of doubt, fear, and ambition. They reach through the thin barrier to possess creatures in the physical world, using living bodies as vessels for their malevolent will. They create nightmares that are so vivid and terrible that mortals wake screaming, their minds scarred by what they have experienced. The state of the veil in this primordial age allows for both beneficial and destructive spiritual influence on Thedas. A benevolent spirit might guide a lost traveler to safety, appearing in dreams to show the way home. A demon might drive that same traveler to madness, filling their mind with paranoid delusions until they attack their own companions. The same thin barrier that allows healing spirits to soothe the sick also permits demons of despair to push the suffering toward death. Every interaction between the Fade and the physical world carries the potential for salvation or damnation, and there is no way to permit one without risking the other. This fundamental tension, this coexistence of light and darkness, of creation and corruption, defines the primordial age of Thedas and sets the stage for all the conflicts and choices that will follow in the ages to come. From the raw chaos of creation emerges order, and with order comes life. Approximately 8,000 years before the Ancient Age calendar would even begin, in an era so distant that only fragments of memory survive in song and stone, the first sentient beings walk the world of Thedas. These are the elves, and their civilization, known as Elvenon, will endure for millennia, building wonders that later ages can scarcely imagine. The elves do not simply inhabit this world. They are intrinsically connected to it in ways that future races will never fully understand. Where humans and dwarves will later struggle to grasp even the basics of magic, the elves breathe it as naturally as air. Their entire society is built upon a foundation of magical mastery so profound that the line between reality and dream becomes fluid, malleable, subject to the will of those powerful enough to shape it. This is not the limited, dangerous magic that will exist in later ages, constrained by the veil and feared by common folk. This is magic as it was meant to be, raw and limitless, flowing through every aspect of elven existence. At the heart of Elvenon stands the golden city of Arlathan, a metropolis that defies conventional description. Imagine towers that shift and reshape themselves according to the desires of their inhabitants, gardens where plants grow in impossible geometries, bridges of pure light spanning distances that should not be crossable, and you begin to approach what Arlathan represents. The city is not merely built with magic. It is magic made manifest, a place where thought and reality intertwine so completely that the distinction becomes meaningless. Arlathan serves as both the physical and spiritual center of elven civilization, a beacon of their achievement and a symbol of their dominance over the natural world. But Elvenon is not a democracy, nor even a typical monarchy. The elven people are ruled by the Evanuris, a pantheon of exceptionally powerful mages whose abilities elevate them so far above their subjects that worship becomes the natural response. These are not distant, abstract deities dwelling in some unreachable heaven. The Evanuris walk among their people, visible and tangible, performing feats of magic so spectacular that divinity seems the only adequate explanation. They command armies, reshape landscapes, create new forms of life, and exercise authority that is absolute and unquestioned. To the elves of this age, the Evanuris are gods, and their word is law. The pantheon includes several figures whose names will echo through history, though their true natures will be distorted and misunderstood by later generations. Elgar Nun, the All-Father, is revered as the eldest and most powerful, a god of vengeance and retribution who, according to legend, once buried the sun itself for scorching the earth. Falun Din, the friend of the dead, guides spirits through their journey from life to death and back again, his temples serving as waypoints for souls in transition. Durthaman, the keeper of secrets, hoards knowledge with jealous intensity, his archives containing wisdom that lesser minds cannot comprehend. Andruel, the huntress, roams the forests and wild places, her prowess in the hunt unmatched by any mortal or spirit. Siles, the hearthkeeper, teaches the domestic arts and is credited with giving fire to the people. June, the master of crafts, forges weapons and tools of such quality that they seem alive. Gila 9, the mother of the Hala, will eventually ascend to join the Evanuris after demonstrating her ability to create entirely new species of creatures, her experiments in biological manipulation earning her a place among the gods. Yet, among all the Evanuris, two stand apart in ways that will prove crucial to everything that follows. The first is Mythal, the All-Mother, who occupies a unique position within the pantheon. Where the other Evanuris often act on impulse, pursuing their own desires and ambitions with little regard for consequences, Mythal serves as a voice of wisdom and restraint. She is the mediator, the judge, the one who settles disputes between the gods when their conflicts threaten to spill over into catastrophe. Her followers revere her not for displays of raw power, though she possesses that in abundance, but for her compassion and her commitment to justice. When the common elves suffer under the demands of the other Evanuris, it is Mythal who hears their pleas. When the gods quarrel among themselves, it is Mythal who brokers peace. She is, in many ways, the conscience of the pantheon, the moral center that prevents their rule from descending into complete tyranny. The second exceptional figure is Fen-Herald, the Dreadwolf, though in this age he is not yet known by that title. His true name, the name he was born with, is Solace, and he occupies an unusual position in elven society. He is counted among the powerful certainly, his magical abilities rivaling those of the Evanuris themselves, but he does not sit among them as an equal. Instead, he walks between worlds, between the realm of the gods and the realm of the common people, between the waking world and the Fade, never fully belonging to either. Some view him as a trickster, a rebel who delights in undermining authority and exposing the pretensions of the powerful. Others see him as a champion of the oppressed, someone willing to challenge the Evanurus when their demands become too burdensome. The truth, as is often the case with Solus, is more complex than either interpretation suggests. He serves Mythal with genuine devotion, acting as her agent and confidant, yet he also maintains a degree of independence that the other Evanurus find troubling and incomprehensible. The elves of this era experience existence in ways that later races will find impossible to imagine. They are immortal, not in the sense of being unable to die, for they can certainly be killed, but in that age and disease hold no power over them. An elf can live for thousands of years without showing any sign of decline, their bodies and minds remaining vital and strong. But even more remarkable is what happens when they do die. Their spirits do not simply vanish into oblivion. Instead, they return to the Fade, that realm of dreams and spirits that exists alongside physical reality, and there they rest, their memories and personalities intact until they are ready to be reborn into new bodies. Death, for the ancient elves, is not an ending but a transition, a temporary state between one life and the next. The Fade itself is fundamentally different in this age. In later eras, after the creation of the Veil, the Fade will become a distant, dangerous place, accessible only to mages in their dreams or through risky magical rituals. But for the ancient elves, the Fade is simply another part of reality, as real and tangible as the physical world. They can walk into it as easily as stepping through a doorway, conversing with spirits, exploring landscapes built from thought and emotion, and drawing upon its power to fuel their magic. The spirits that inhabit the Fade are not the feared demons of later ages, or at least not primarily. They are beings of pure concept and emotion, personifications of abstract ideas like wisdom, purpose, compassion, and justice. The elves interact with these spirits regularly, forming partnerships and friendships that blur the line between the material and the immaterial. Yet, even in this golden age, darkness begins to creep into paradise. The Evanurus, for all their power and glory, are not content with mere worship and respect. As centuries pass, their demands upon their followers grow increasingly burdensome. They require tribute, vast quantities of resources and treasures to fuel their grand projects and satisfy their appetites. They demand sacrifices, though the exact nature of these sacrifices will be debated by scholars for ages to come. Some texts suggest ritual offerings of animals or goods, while darker fragments hint at something far more sinister. The Evanurus begin to mark their followers with Valazlin, facial tattoos that later generations will romantically interpret as symbols of pride and heritage, but which originally serve a more disturbing purpose. These are slave markings, brands of ownership that identify which god a particular elf belongs to, stripping away their autonomy and reducing them to property. The power struggles among the Evanurus themselves grow more intense and more dangerous. These are not mere political disagreements. When gods quarrel, the consequences ripple across all of Elvenan. Territories are contested, followers are commanded to fight on behalf of their divine masters, and magical weapons of terrible potency are unleashed. The elevation of Ghilanane to the ranks of the Evanurus demonstrates both the wonders and the horrors of this age. Her ability to create new life, to twist and reshape living creatures into forms that serve her purposes, is celebrated as a magnificent achievement. But the creatures she creates are not always beautiful or benign. Some are monsters, abominations that blur the line between genius and madness, and when the other Evanurus demand that she destroy her creations as the price of her ascension, the fact that she agrees tells us something troubling about the values of the Pantheon. Then comes Andriel's descent into darkness, an event that will have consequences reaching far beyond its immediate aftermath. Andriel, the great huntress, grows bored with ordinary prey. She has hunted every creature in the physical world, mastered every challenge the forests and mountains can offer, and she craves something more. So she turns her attention to the Fade, stalking spirits through the shifting landscapes of dream and memory. But even this eventually fails to satisfy her, and she pushes further, venturing beyond the Fade into a realm that should never be entered. The texts call it the Void, and some scholars believe this is the same darkness that existed before creation, the nothingness from which the Maker, or Elgar'nan, or whatever force-initiated reality, drew the raw material of existence. Others argue it is something different, a place of pure corruption and madness that exists as a twisted mirror to the Fade. Whatever the Void truly is, Andriel's expeditions into its depths change her. She returns from her hunts carrying weapons and armor crafted from the Void's essence, and these artifacts corrupt everything they touch. The corruption spreads from Andriel herself to her followers, to the lands she walks through, to the creatures she hunts. This is not merely a spiritual or moral corruption. It is a physical plague, a blight that twists living things into grotesque parodies of their original forms. The symptoms are horrifyingly familiar to anyone who knows the later history of Thedas. The blackening of flesh, the loss of rational thought, the transformation of ordinary creatures into monsters driven only by hunger and rage. Andriel has brought the First Blight into the world, though it will not be called by that name for thousands of years. Mythal, ever the protector and healer, intervenes to save both Andriel and the elven people from this spreading corruption. But the cure comes at a terrible price. To cleanse Andruil of the Void's influence, Mythal must absorb some of that corruption into herself, taking the darkness into her own being to prevent its spread. The ritual succeeds, Andruil is restored to something approaching her former self, though she is never quite the same afterward, but Mythal now carries a seed of the Void within her, a shadow that will haunt her until her death and beyond. And death comes for Mythal sooner than anyone expects. The other Evanuris, led by Elgar'nan and Falandin, grow to fear and resent Mythal's power and influence. She is the only force that can restrain them, the only voice that can challenge their increasingly tyrannical demands. As long as she lives, they cannot exercise the absolute dominion they crave. So they conspire against her, plotting in secret, and when the moment comes, they strike. Mythal, the All-Mother, the wisest and most compassionate of the gods, is betrayed and murdered by her own pantheon, her death marking the end of any pretense that the Evanuris rule for the benefit of their people rather than their own glorification. Mythal's death ignites something in Solas that can never be extinguished. The grief he feels is profound, but it is the anger that drives him forward. The murder of the one Evanuris who stood for wisdom and compassion reveals the depths to which the God Kings have fallen. They are no longer protectors or leaders. They have become tyrants who will destroy anyone, even one of their own, to preserve their power. Solas understands now that the Evanuris cannot be reasoned with, cannot be reformed. They must be stopped, and if the other elves will not rise against them, then he will act alone. But Solas does not work entirely alone. In the shadows of Elvenan, there exist others who share his disillusionment. These are powerful elven mages, spirits who have taken physical form, and those who have witnessed the cruelty of the Evanuris firsthand. Some scholars in later ages will call them the Forgotten Ones, though the truth of who they were remains murky. They are not a unified faction like the Evanuris, but rather a loose collection of rebels, outcasts, and those who remember what the elven people once stood for. Some are former servants of the Evanuris who grew disgusted with their masters. Others are ancient spirits who refuse to be bound and enslaved. Together, they represent the resistance, the last hope for a people who have been blinded by the glory of their false gods. Solas gathers these allies carefully, speaking to them in dreams, meeting them in hidden places where the Evanuris do not tread. He shares with them his knowledge of the true nature of the Evanuris, the murders they have committed, the spirits they have enslaved, the elves they have branded and bound. He speaks of Mythal and what her death represents. He tells them that the Evanuris are planning something even more catastrophic, that their hunger for power knows no bounds. If they are not stopped, they will consume everything. The Forgotten Ones listen, and they agree. Something must be done. The question is what? The Evanuris are immensely powerful. They command armies of enslaved elves and bound spirits. They possess artifacts of unimaginable magical potency. They have shaped the very land of Elfhenen to their will. A direct confrontation would be suicide. Even with the Forgotten Ones at his side, Solas knows he cannot defeat the Evanuris in open battle. He needs a different approach, something they will not see coming, something that will neutralize their power permanently. And so Solas devises a plan that is as audacious as it is dangerous. He will not kill the Evanuris. He will imprison them. He will lock them away in a place where they can do no more harm, where their tyranny will end forever. That place is the Fade itself. The irony is not lost on Solas. The Evanuris draw their power from the Fade, from the spirits they enslave and the dreams they manipulate. It is fitting, then, that the Fade should become their prison. But to imprison the Evanuris in the Fade, Solas must first separate the Fade from the physical world. In the time of Elvenan, there is no barrier between these two realms. The Fade and the waking world exist as one, intertwined and inseparable. Magic flows freely because it is the essence of the Fade made manifest. Spirits walk the earth because there is no wall to keep them out. The elves are immortal because their bodies are sustained by the constant presence of Fade energy. To lock the Evanuris away, Solas must create a barrier, a veil that will divide reality itself. This is the veil. Solas begins to construct it in secret, weaving together magic of a kind that has never been attempted before. It requires an understanding of both the physical world and the Fade that few possess. It requires power on a scale that would make even the Evanuris pause. Solas draws on his own considerable abilities, on the knowledge he has accumulated over countless years, on the assistance of the Forgotten Ones. He studies the nature of reality, the threads that bind the Fade to the waking world. He learns how to sever those threads, how to create a boundary where none existed before. The construction of the veil is not a simple spell. It is a ritual of staggering complexity, a working of magic that will reshape the fundamental nature of existence. Solas knows that once he begins, there will be no turning back. He also knows that the consequences will be severe. Separating the Fade from the physical world will not only imprison the Evanuris, it will change everything. The elves will lose their connection to the Fade. Their magic will diminish. Their immortality will end. But Solas believes he has no choice. The alternative is to allow the Evanuris to continue their reign of terror, to enslave and destroy until nothing remains. He tells himself that the sacrifice is worth it, that the elven people will be free even if they are diminished, and so, in an act that will echo through the ages, Solas, the Dreadwolf, completes his ritual. He seals away the Evanurus in the Fade, locking them behind the veil he has created. The moment the veil comes into being, reality shudders. The Fade, which has always been part of the world, is suddenly separate. The barrier is invisible, but absolute. Spirits can no longer freely enter the physical world. Mages can still access the Fade through dreams and magic, but the connection is no longer direct. The Evanurus, caught in the moment of the veil's creation, are trapped on the other side. They rage and scream, but they cannot break through. They are imprisoned, perhaps forever, but the cost is immediate and catastrophic. The creation of the veil does not only affect the Evanurus, it affects every living thing in Thedas, but most especially the elves. The elves of Elvenon have always drawn their power, their immortality, their very essence from the Fade. With the veil in place, that connection is severed. The change is not gradual, it is sudden and brutal. The elves become mortal. Their lifespans, once infinite, are now measured in decades rather than millennia. The first generation to experience this change does not understand what is happening. They feel themselves weakening, aging in ways they never have before. Elves who have lived for thousands of years suddenly find themselves growing old. Some die within days of the veil's creation, their bodies unable to sustain themselves without the constant flow of Fade energy. Others linger, confused and terrified as they watch their friends and loved ones wither and fade. The elves' magical abilities are also severely diminished. In the time before the veil, magic was as natural to the elves as breathing. They could shape reality with a thought, command spirits, walk through dreams as easily as they walk through forests. Now, magic requires effort. It is still possible, but it is no longer effortless. Many elves find that spells they once cast without thinking now exhaust them. Some lose their magical abilities entirely. The connection to the Fade is still there, but it is like trying to see through a thick fog. The clarity and power they once possessed are gone. The elven empire of Arlathan, which has stood for thousands of years, begins to fall into ruin. The entire infrastructure of Elvenon is built on magic. The cities float on currents of Fade energy. The temples are sustained by bound spirits. The great works of elven art and architecture rely on a constant connection to the Fade to maintain their form. With the veil in place, all of this begins to collapse. Buildings that have stood for millennia start to crumble. The floating spires of Arlathan, once the jewels of the elven empire, fall from the sky. The magical wards that protect the cities fail. The enchantments that preserve food and water dissipate. The once vibrant elven cities and temples become desolate. Arlathan, the heart of Elvenon, is hit the hardest. The city, which was a testament to the heights of elven civilization, becomes a ruin almost overnight. The streets, once filled with immortal elves pursuing knowledge and art, are now empty. The great libraries, which held the accumulated wisdom of ages, are abandoned as the magic that preserved the texts fails. The temples to the Evanurus, already tainted by the truth of their gods' crimes, stand as hollow monuments to a fallen age. The gardens, which bloomed eternally through magic, wither and die. The fountains run dry. The lights that illuminated the city, powered by captured spirits, go dark. Other elven cities across Elvenon suffer similar fates. The network of alluvions, the magical mirrors that allowed instant travel across vast distances, becomes unreliable. Some stop working entirely. Others become dangerous, leading travelers to unknown destinations or trapping them between worlds. The great works of elven magic, the artifacts and wonders that define their civilization, lose their power or become unstable. The elves, who have built their entire society on the foundation of Fade magic, find themselves adrift in a world that no longer makes sense. The surviving elves are left disoriented and weakened. They struggle to comprehend what has happened. The gods they worshipped are gone, vanished without explanation. The magic they relied on has failed. Their immortality, the defining characteristic of their race, has been stripped away. Many fall into despair. Some believe it is a punishment from the Evanurus for some unknown transgression. Others think it is the end of the world, that reality itself is unraveling. A few suspect the truth that this is the work of the Dreadwolf, but even they do not understand why he would do such a thing. In the chaos and confusion, the elven people fracture. Without the Evanurus to rule them, without the structure of their empire to guide them, they scatter. Some try to rebuild, to salvage what they can from the ruins of Arlathan. Others flee into the wilderness, hoping to find safety away from the collapsing cities. Still others simply give up, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the change. The unity that once defined Elvenon is gone. The elves are no longer a single people with a single purpose. They are survivors, struggling to adapt to a world that has fundamentally changed. Solus himself is not immune to the consequences of his actions. He has succeeded in his goal. The Evanurus are imprisoned. The tyranny of the false gods has ended, but the cost is far greater than he anticipated. He did not foresee how completely the veil would sever the elves from the Fade. He did not realize that his people would lose so much. The guilt weighs on him, a burden that grows heavier with each passing day. He walks through the ruins of Arlathan and sees what his actions have wrought. He sees the suffering of his people, the collapse of their civilization, the death of their dreams. Burdened by the unintended consequences of his actions, Solus makes a decision. He cannot undo what he has done, not yet. The magic required to create the veil has exhausted him. He needs time to recover, to think, to plan, and so he retreats into a long slumber, a magical sleep that will last for thousands of years. He hopes that when he wakes, the world will be different. He hopes that he will find a way to undo the veil, to restore the elves to what they once were, to make amends for the catastrophe he has caused. But for now, he can do nothing but sleep and dream of a future that may never come. As the centuries pass, the memory of the true nature of the Evanuris and the events leading to the veil's creation fades into myth and legend for the elves. The survivors do not pass down the full truth to their children. Some details are lost, others are deliberately obscured. The Evanuris become distant figures of worship rather than the tyrants they truly were. The Dreadwolf becomes a villain in elven stories, a trickster god who betrayed his people. The truth of Mythal's murder, of the rebellion, of Solus's desperate gambit to save the elves from their gods, is forgotten. What remains are fragments, distorted echoes of a history too painful to remember fully. As the immortal empire of Elvenon begins its slow, prideful decline, deep beneath the surface of Thedas, another civilization is already ancient beyond reckoning. Long before the elves walked the forests above, long before humans would set foot on these lands, the dwarves emerged from the very bones of the world itself. To understand their story, we must descend into the depths and travel back to approximately 3,955 years before the Ancient Age, to a time when the Earth itself was alive in ways the surface world could scarcely imagine. The dwarves tell stories of the Titans, colossal beings of living rock that existed at the foundation of the world. These were not gods in the way surface dwellers might understand divinity, but something far more fundamental. The Titans were the world, or at least the deep places of it. Their bodies formed mountains, their blood ran through veins of lyrium, the mysterious substance that would later become essential to magic itself. The Titans created what the dwarves call the stone, not merely rock and mineral, but a living network that connected all things beneath the surface. The stone was consciousness and matter intertwined, a geological symphony that the dwarves could feel in their very souls. From this stone, from the flesh of the Titans themselves, the dwarves were born. They did not evolve or migrate. They simply were, shaped by the stone as naturally as crystals form in a cave. This origin would define everything about dwarven culture for millennia to come. Unlike the elves above, who drew power from the Fade, the realm of dreams and spirits, or humans who would later bridge both worlds, the dwarves existed in complete separation from the Fade. They did not dream. They could not naturally perform magic. Instead, they possessed an intimate connection to the stone itself, an awareness of the deep earth that no surface race could replicate. The early dwarves began to carve out their existence in the darkness, and what they built would become legendary. They established the first Thaigs, underground cities hewn from solid rock with a precision and artistry that suggested their connection to the stone was more than spiritual metaphor. These were not crude caves or simple tunnels. The dwarven Thaigs were architectural marvels, with soaring caverns supported by pillars of living rock, intricate networks of chambers and halls, and engineering that would remain functional thousands of years after their construction. The greatest of these would include Kal Sharok, Hormak, Kal Rapartha, and eventually Orzammar, which would endure into the modern age. But the true genius of the dwarven civilization lay in the deep roads. As their population grew and their ambitions expanded, the dwarves began connecting their Thaigs with an underground highway system of staggering scope. The deep roads were not merely tunnels for travel. They were a subterranean empire unto themselves, wide enough for merchant caravans and military columns, stretching for thousands upon thousands of miles beneath the entire continent of Thedas. At their height, you could theoretically travel from one end of Thedas to the other without ever seeing the sun, passing through dozens of Thaigs, each a thriving metropolis in its own right. The Dwarven Empire developed a complex society that reflected their unique relationship with the stone. At the foundation of their culture stood the caste system, a rigid social hierarchy that determined every aspect of a dwarf's life from birth. The highest caste were the nobles, who governed the Thais and controlled the vast wealth that flowed through dwarven society. Below them were the warrior caste, defenders of the empire, then the smith caste, whose legendary craftsmen created works of such quality that surface races would treasure dwarven metalwork for generations. The minor caste delved ever deeper into the stone, extracting precious metals and lyrium. The merchant caste facilitated trade both within the empire and, eventually, with the surface world. The servant caste maintained the households and infrastructure, and lowest of all were the casteless, those unfortunate souls born outside the system or cast out from it, forced to survive in the slums and shadows of dwarven society. Yet, above even the nobles stood the paragons, the most revered figures in dwarven culture. A paragon was a dwarf who achieved something so extraordinary, so transformative for dwarven society, that they were elevated to a status approaching divinity. The Assembly of Orzammar, the governing body of the dwarves, would vote to recognize a paragon, and from that moment forward, the paragon's name would be remembered forever. Their descendants would form a new noble house, and their deeds would be recorded in the memories, the great historical records kept by the Shaperit, the caste of dwarves dedicated to preserving history. Paragons like Paragon Eogican, who founded one of the greatest noble houses, or Paragon Branca, who would later create the Anvil of the Void, represented the pinnacle of dwarven achievement. To become a paragon was to literally reshape dwarven society, and it was the highest aspiration any dwarf could hold. The Dwarven Empire reached its absolute zenith in the centuries before the surface world descended into chaos. At this peak, hundreds of tags thrived beneath the mountains, their populations numbering in the millions. The deep roads connected them all in a network of commerce and culture. Dwarven mining operations extracted seemingly endless wealth from the earth. Their smiths produced weapons and armor of unparalleled quality. They had even begun establishing trading relationships with the elves of Arlathan, though these remained limited, as the dwarves preferred the comfort and safety of their underground realm. The surface world was alien to them, uncomfortable, a place where they could not feel the reassuring presence of the stone. While the dwarves built their empire in the depths, the surface world was about to change dramatically. Humanity, the third great race of Thedas, arrived from the north sometime around 3,000 years before the Ancient Age. Unlike the elves who had always been present and the dwarves who emerged from the stone itself, humans were migrants, crossing into Thedas from lands unknown. They came in waves, tribal groups seeking new territories, and they found a world already claimed by the immortal elves. These early humans were primitive compared to the civilizations they encountered. They had no great cities, no sophisticated magic, no ancient traditions stretching back millennia. What they did have was adaptability, ambition, and numbers. Human tribes began settling across Thedas, particularly in the northern regions where elven influence was less concentrated. They established villages and towns, learning agriculture and metalworking, slowly building the foundations of what would become human civilization. The relationship between humans and elves during this early period was complex and often fraught. Some elves viewed humans with curiosity, these short-lived, dream-touched beings so different from themselves. Others saw them as primitive intruders, barely worthy of notice. Some humans revered the elves as living gods, seeking to learn from their magic and wisdom. Others resented elven arrogance and superiority. But the elves, secure in their immortality and power, largely ignored the human settlements, confident that these brief-lived creatures posed no threat to Elvenon. One group of humans, however, would not remain primitive for long. In the northern reaches of Thedas, in a region that would bear their name, a human civilization began to coalesce with ambitions that would reshape the world. This was the beginning of the Tevinter Imperium, and its rise would be meteoric. The Tevinter Imperium was founded on principles radically different from either elven or dwarven society, where the elves drew their power from their immortal nature and connection to the Fade, and the dwarves from their unity with the stone. The Tevinters built their civilization on the systematic study and application of magic. Early Tevinter mages discovered ways to manipulate the Fade more deliberately than the instinctive magic of the elves. They developed structured schools of magical thought, created hierarchies of magical power, and most significantly, they made magic the foundation of political authority. The Tevinter Imperium grew rapidly, absorbing neighboring human tribes and settlements, expanding its borders through a combination of magical might and military conquest. The society they built was a magocracy, a nation ruled by mages. At the top of Tevinter, society stood the Magisters, powerful mages who controlled vast estates and commanded armies. These Magisters formed the Magisterium, the ruling council of the Imperium, and they elected from among their number an Archon, the supreme ruler of Tevinter. Below the Magisters were lesser mages, then the common citizens, and at the bottom, slaves, a massive underclass that would eventually include conquered peoples from across Thedas. As Tevinter's power grew, so did its mages' ambitions. They were not content with the magic they possessed. They sought more. Always more. Tevinter mages began practicing blood magic, using the life force contained in blood to fuel spells of tremendous power. They summoned demons from the Fade, binding these spirits to their will. They conducted experiments that other peoples would consider abominations, pushing the boundaries of what magic could achieve. The Magisterium encouraged this research, believing that magical supremacy would ensure Tevinter's dominance forever. The Tevinter Imperium eventually came into conflict with Elvenon, and in a series of wars and conquests that would span centuries, Tevinter systematically dismantled the Elven Empire. The immortal elves, weakened by their own internal conflicts and the mysterious loss of their immortality, could not stand against Tevinter's organized magical warfare and vast armies. Tevinter enslaved the elven population, destroyed Arlathan itself, and claimed the elven lands as their own. The Imperium reached its greatest extent, controlling most of northern and central Thedas. But conquest was not enough for the most ambitious Magisters. They looked beyond the physical world to the Fade itself, to the Golden City that floated at the heart of the realm of dreams. According to legend and the visions of dreamers, the Golden City was the throne of the Maker, the god who had created the world and then turned away from it. The city shone with a light that could be seen throughout the Fade, perfect and untouchable, and no spirit or demon could enter it. The most powerful magisters of Tevinter, calling themselves the Magisters Sidereal, conceived of a plan so audacious it would have been dismissed as impossible if they had not possessed the magical might to attempt it. Led by Archon Thalcion, these magisters would physically enter the Fade, breach the defenses of the Golden City, and claim the throne of the Maker for themselves. They would become gods. The ritual they devised required blood magic on a scale never before attempted, the sacrifice of countless lives to fuel the spell. In approximately 1,195 years before the Ancient Age, the Magisters Sidereal performed their great working. Reality itself bent to their will as they tore open the veil, the barrier between the physical world and the Fade, and stepped through not as dreamers but as living physical beings. They breached the Golden City. They entered the throne room of the Maker himself, and in that moment of ultimate hubris, everything went catastrophically, world-shatteringly wrong. The Magisters Sidereal, having breached the veil and entered the Golden City through sheer magical force and unparalleled hubris, found themselves standing in what they believed would be the throne room of the Maker himself. Instead of divine glory, however, their very presence, their mortal corruption, and overwhelming pride defiled the sacred space. The Golden City, that beacon of perfection that had shone in the Fade since time immemorial, turned black in an instant. The transformation was absolute and irreversible. The city that had represented hope and divine promise became the Black City, a monument to mortal arrogance and the corruption that pride can bring. The Magisters themselves were not spared this transformation, their bodies twisted and warped, their flesh becoming something monstrous, something that had never existed in Thedas before. They became the first Darkspawn, creatures of corruption and hunger, their minds shattered but still driven by a terrible, insatiable need to spread their taint to everything they touched. The Maker, witnessing this ultimate transgression, cast the corrupted Magisters back out of the Fade. They were hurled through the veil, returning to the physical world of Thedas, not as the god kings they had imagined becoming, but as abominations. These first Darkspawn carried with them the Blight, a spiritual and physical corruption that would become the greatest threat Thedas had ever known. The exact location where they emerged remains a matter of scholarly debate, but most historians agree they appeared somewhere in the Deep Roads, the vast underground network of tunnels that connected the Dwarven Empire. From that moment, everything changed. The Darkspawn did not simply exist as isolated monsters. They possessed an overwhelming drive to spread their corruption, to infect other living creatures and transform them into more Darkspawn. Genlocks, Hurlocks, Shrieks, and Ogres, each spawned from different races, humans, dwarves, elves, and Qunari respectively, began to multiply in the darkness beneath the earth. The corruption they carried was not merely a disease, but a fundamental twisting of life itself. Animals that encountered the Blight became twisted, monstrous versions of themselves. The land itself could be poisoned, turning fertile soil into barren, cracked earth that would grow nothing. Water sources became tainted, undrinkable. This was the beginning of what would be known as the First Blight, though at first no one on the surface understood what was happening. The initial spread was slow, contained to the deepest parts of the deep roads where few ventured, but the Darkspawn were relentless, and their numbers grew with terrifying speed. Every creature they corrupted, every dwarf or surface traveler who wandered too deep and fell to their blades, became another soldier in their growing army. Deep beneath the earth, in the oldest and darkest places of the world, something ancient stirred. Dumat, the Dragon of Silence, one of the old gods that the Tevinter Imperium had worshipped for centuries, felt the call of the Blight. These old gods were immensely powerful dragons, beings of such age and might that they had been revered as deities. They slumbered in the deepest reaches of the earth, in prisons or resting places that predated even the Dwarven Empire. The Darkspawn, driven by instinct or perhaps by some echo of their former purpose, sought out Dumat's resting place. When they found him, the Blight corrupted even this mighty being. Dumat awoke not as the divine creature he had been, but as an archdemon, a corrupted dragon of immense power whose mind was now linked to every Darkspawn in existence. Through this connection, the archdemon could command the Darkspawn hordes with perfect coordination, turning them from a scattered threat into an organized army of annihilation. In the year 1195 of the Ancient Age, the First Blight truly began in earnest. Dumat, now fully awakened and commanding his corrupted legions, drove the Darkspawn upward and outward. The attack on the Dwarven Empire was catastrophic. The Darkspawn poured out of the deepest tunnels in numbers that seemed endless. Tags, the great dwarven cities that had stood for thousands of years, fell one after another. Each Thag that was overrun became a staging ground for further attacks, a nest where more Darkspawn could be spawned. The dwarves, despite their legendary skill in combat and their intimate knowledge of the deep roads, found themselves overwhelmed. This was not a war they could win through superior tactics or better weapons. The Darkspawn simply kept coming, wave after wave, and every fallen dwarf might rise again as a corrupted mockery of what they had been. The losses to the Dwarven Empire were staggering beyond measure. Entire Thags, some housing tens of thousands of dwarves, were evacuated in desperate retreats or simply lost when the Darkspawn broke through faster than anyone anticipated. Paragons, those legendary dwarves whose achievements were so great they were elevated to near-divine status, fell in the fighting. Their deaths were not just personal tragedies, but cultural catastrophes, as each paragon represented centuries of accumulated knowledge, skill, and leadership. The great Thaig of Hormok fell. The Thaig of Kal Sharok was cut off from the rest of the Empire, its people forced to seal themselves away and presumed lost. Countless smaller Thaigs, mining operations, and waypoints throughout the deep roads were abandoned, their populations fleeing to the handful of strongholds that could still be defended. The Dwarven Empire, which had once stretched across the entire underground of Thedas, connecting every corner of the continent through the deep roads, was shattered into isolated pockets of resistance. The surface world initially had no idea of the catastrophe unfolding below. The dwarves had always been somewhat isolationist, managing their own affairs in their underground kingdoms while maintaining trade relationships with surface nations but rarely sharing the details of their internal struggles. By the time the Darkspawn began emerging onto the surface, drawn upward by the Archdemon's will and their own hunger for corruption, it was already too late to prepare. The Tevinter Imperium, still the dominant power in northern Thedas despite the loss of the Magister's Sidereal, was the first surface nation to face the full fury of the Blight. Darkspawn erupted from cave systems, from old dwarven trading posts, from any connection to the deep roads. They swept across the countryside in hordes, corrupting everything in their path. Entire villages were wiped out overnight. Farms were left as blighted wastelands. The Imperium's legions, accustomed to fighting human enemies or the occasional dragon, were utterly unprepared for an enemy that felt no fear, that needed no supply lines, and that grew stronger with every casualty it inflicted. The Blight spread south and west, consuming everything before it. The elven settlements, already diminished and scattered after the fall of Arlathan, suffered terribly. Human kingdoms that had only recently begun to establish themselves found their borders collapsing. For nearly 2 centuries, the Darkspawn seemed unstoppable. Dumat himself led assaults on major cities, his presence on the battlefield a terror that broke armies before they could even engage. The Archdemon's roar could be heard for miles, a sound that carried with it the weight of corruption and doom. Mages found that their most powerful spells seemed to barely inconvenience the creature, and conventional weapons simply could not pierce its corrupted hide deeply enough to cause lasting harm. Every attempt to organize a defense, to push back the Darkspawn tide, ended in failure and retreat. It was in this darkest hour that the Grey Wardens were founded. In the year 992 of the Ancient Age, approximately 200 years after the Blight began, a coalition came together at Weishaupt in the Anderfels, one of the regions most devastated by the Darkspawn onslaught. Mages and warriors from every race, human, elf, and dwarf, united with a single purpose, to fight the Blight and find a way to end it. They were led by a group of visionaries who understood that conventional warfare had failed and would continue to fail. Something more was needed, something that could match the Darkspawn's own corruption with a weapon forged from that same darkness. These founders included powerful mages who had studied the nature of the Blight, warriors who had survived countless battles against the Darkspawn, and dwarven strategists who understood the enemy's tactics from years of underground warfare. The Grey Wardens developed the Joining, a ritual that would define their order forever. The Joining required initiates to drink a mixture containing Darkspawn blood, the very essence of the corruption they fought against. Most who underwent the ritual died, their bodies unable to withstand the taint, but those who survived found themselves fundamentally changed. They could sense Darkspawn, feel their presence in a way no one else could. They gained a limited immunity to the Blight's corruption, able to fight Darkspawn without immediately succumbing to the taint that would kill an ordinary person within days. They could hear the Archdemon's call, that psychic song that connected all Darkspawn, which gave them insight into the enemy's movements and intentions. The cost was steep. Every Grey Warden carried the Blight within them, and eventually it would consume them. They had perhaps 30 years, sometimes less, before the taint drove them mad. When they felt the calling, that final summons of the Blight in their blood, tradition demanded they descend into the deep roads for one last battle against the Darkspawn, dying on their own terms rather than becoming the enemy they had fought. Through years of desperate combat and painful trial and error, the Grey Wardens made the most crucial discovery in the war against the Blight. Archdemons, they learned, could not be killed by conventional means. When an Archdemon's body was destroyed, its soul would simply flee to the nearest Darkspawn, possessing it and regenerating a new form. The dragon would return, again and again, making it effectively immortal. But when a Grey Warden struck the killing blow, something different happened. The Archdemon's soul, attempting to flee into the nearest Darkspawn, was instead drawn into the Grey Warden because of the Blight they carried within themselves. The Warden's own soul and the Archdemon's soul would destroy each other in that moment, killing both permanently. It was a sacrifice, absolute and final, but it was the only way to truly end a Blight. This knowledge changed everything, giving the armies of Thedas hope for the first time in 2 centuries. As the First Blight raged across Thedas, threatening to consume all life, the Grey Wardens, a newly formed order dedicated to fighting the Darkspawn, rose to meet the unprecedented challenge. Their initial efforts were focused on understanding the enemy, They meticulously studied Darkspawn behaviors, their terrifyingly effective siege tactics, and the insidious nature of the Blight itself. Through trial and error, often at great cost, they developed innovative strategies and combat techniques specifically designed to counter the Darkspawn hordes. This included specialized formations to withstand their relentless charges, methods to identify and neutralize their powerful emissaries, and even rudimentary ways to predict their movements, though the Archdemon's corrupting influence often made such predictions unreliable. They also began to document the various types of Darkspawn, from the relentless Hurlocks and Shrieks to the monstrous Ogres, understanding their strengths and weaknesses to better prepare their forces. The Grey Wardens became the singular primary defense against the Blight, their very existence a testament to humanity's, and indeed all sentient races, will to survive. With their strategies honed and their resolve steeled, the Grey Wardens took the lead in the desperate war against the Darkspawn. It was a monumental task, as the various kingdoms and factions of Thedas, often embroiled in their own squabbles, struggled to present a united front. The Wardens, however, transcended political boundaries and racial prejudices. They were a beacon of hope, rallying the disparate forces of humanity, the elves, and even the beleaguered dwarves. They coordinated massive military campaigns, often leading the vanguard into the most dangerous engagements. Their unique ability to sense the Darkspawn, a consequence of the joining ritual, made them invaluable scouts and commanders. They were often the first to arrive at besieged cities and the last to leave a battlefield, ensuring the safe retreat of civilians and allied forces. Their leadership was not just tactical, but also moral, inspiring courage in the face of overwhelming odds and reminding everyone that the survival of all was at stake. The ultimate objective of the Grey Wardens was the Archdemon itself, for only its death could end the Blight. In this First Blight, that Archdemon was Dumat, the Dragon of Silence, one of the 7 old gods worshipped by the ancient Tevinter Imperium. Dumat, now a corrupted, monstrous dragon, commanded the Darkspawn with a terrifying intelligence. The Grey Wardens embarked on a relentless pursuit, tracking Archdemon Dumat across the vast and ravaged lands of Thedas. This was no simple chase. Dumat was cunning and powerful, often leading the Darkspawn in devastating assaults on major cities or key strategic locations, forcing the Wardens to divert their attention to protect the innocent and preserve vital resources. They engaged in countless battles and skirmishes, each encounter a brutal test of their strength and endurance. From the besieged walls of what would one day become Val Royeaux to the desolate plains of the Anderfels and the treacherous passes of the Frostback Mountains, the Grey Wardens followed Dumat's destructive path. They learned to anticipate its movements, to identify its favorite attack vectors, and to understand the subtle shifts in the Darkspawn horde that indicated the Archdemon's presence. Many Grey Wardens fell during this relentless pursuit, their sacrifices paving the way for the inevitable confrontation. After decades of relentless warfare marked by unimaginable suffering and countless losses, the Grey Wardens finally cornered Archdemon Dumat. The exact location of this final climactic battle is debated, but legend places it in the Anderfels, a desolate region that had borne the brunt of the Blight's fury. The confrontation was epic, a desperate struggle between the last vestiges of hope and the embodiment of corruption. The Archdemon, a creature of immense power, unleashed its full might, spewing blight fire and commanding its vast Darkspawn army in a final, desperate defense. The Grey Wardens, though weary and diminished, fought with the ferocity of those who knew the fate of the world rested on their shoulders. They employed every tactic they had learned, every ounce of courage they possessed. The battle raged for days, a maelstrom of steel, magic, and blight. In the midst of this cataclysmic struggle, a Grey Warden hero whose name is largely lost to history stepped forward to deliver the killing blow to Dumat. Though the specifics of this hero's identity are shrouded in the mists of time, their act of ultimate sacrifice is etched into the very fabric of Thedas. Some legends speak of a human warrior, others of an elven mage or even a dwarven berserker, but all agree on the profound courage and selflessness of this individual. This hero, imbued with the unique power of the Grey Wardens to absorb the soul of an archdemon upon its death, plunged their weapon into Dumat's corrupted heart. The Archdemon's dying scream echoed across the ravaged land, a sound of profound agony and defeat as its dark essence was drawn into the Grey Warden. This act, the ultimate sacrifice, ensured that Dumat's soul would not simply return to the Fade to be reborn, but would instead be destroyed, ending its reign of terror permanently. The hero, in turn, perished, their own life extinguished by the overwhelming power of the Archdemon's essence. With the defeat and death of Archdemon Dumat, the First Blight finally came to an end. The Darkspawn, leaderless and disoriented, scattered into the deep roads, their organized threat temporarily neutralized. The immediate danger had passed, and a collective sigh of relief swept across Thedas. However, the victory was bittersweet. The world was scarred, its lands ravaged, its populations decimated. Entire cities lay in ruins, and the memory of the Blight would forever haunt the survivors. More importantly, the Darkspawn remained a threat. While their Archdemon was gone, the endless horde still lurked beneath the surface, a festering wound in the world, waiting for the next old god to be corrupted and awaken. The First Blight served as a brutal reminder that the war against the Darkspawn was not a single conflict, but an ongoing struggle, a constant vigilance required for the survival of all. The consequences of the First Blight were particularly devastating for the dwarves. Their once vast network of thags, the subterranean cities and settlements that formed their sprawling empire, had been the primary battleground for much of the conflict. The deep roads, the intricate tunnels connecting these thags, were now largely overrun and infested with darkspawn. The dwarves, unable to reclaim their lost territories, were forced to abandon the majority of these ancestral homes. They retreated to their remaining strongholds like the majestic city of Orzammar, a bastion of dwarven culture and resilience deep within the Frostback Mountains, and Kal Sharok, a more isolated thag in the far north. This forced retreat was a profound blow to dwarven pride and their way of life. The dwarven empire, once a dominant force, was shattered. Their once vast network of thag, stretching for thousands of miles beneath the surface, was mostly lost to the Darkspawn. Thags like Gundar, Hormak, and Baunamar, once thriving centers of craftsmanship and trade, became desolate ruins, monuments to a bygone era. The surface world, which the dwarves had once viewed with a mixture of disdain and curiosity, became increasingly important as their underground domain shrank. Their connections to the surface, once purely for trade, now became essential for survival, as resources within the remaining thags grew scarce. The loss of their empire and the constant threat of darkspawn incursions from the deep roads irrevocably changed dwarven society, fostering a deep-seated stoicism and a fierce protectiveness of their remaining homes. In the aftermath of the First Blight, with the Archdemon defeated and the immediate threat subsided, the Grey Wardens solidified their position as a permanent fixture in Thedaz. Their unparalleled success in leading the fight against the Darkspawn and their unique understanding of the Blight made them indispensable. They established their order as a global organization, transcending national borders, with fortresses like Weishaupt in the Anderfels becoming their primary headquarters. Their mission was clear: to prepare for the next Blight. They continued to recruit new members, regardless of race or origin, subjecting them to the perilous joining ritual to gain the Darkspawn sense and the ability to slay an archdemon. They maintained their vigilance, sending out scouts and agents to monitor the deep roads and the desolate regions where Darkspawn activity was still prevalent. The Grey Wardens became the silent guardians of Thedas, an ever-watchful sentinel, forever vigilant for the next Blight, a grim reminder that the war was far from over. Their existence was a testament to the enduring threat of the Darkspawn and the eternal struggle for survival in a world constantly teetering on the brink of another cataclysm. Welcome back to our journey through the Dragon Age timeline. We've just witnessed the rise of the Dwarven kingdoms, their incredible feats of engineering, and the mysterious advent of the deep roads. Now, as our timeline progresses, we arrive at a period of profound transformation and conflict, stretching from approximately 1200 years before the Divine Age, or Ancient Era, into the 800s of the Towers Age. This era is dominated by the sprawling influence of the Tevinter Imperium and the subsequent religious wars known as the Exalted Marches. Long before the Chantry's dominance, a new human power emerged in the northern lands of Thedas, the Tevinter Imperium. This was not merely a kingdom, but a vast empire built on a foundation of powerful magic, political ambition, and a deeply ingrained practice of blood magic and slavery. Unlike the later Chantry-aligned nations, Tevinter saw magic not as a gift to be carefully managed, but as a birthright, a tool for power and control. Their mages, known as magisters, held immense authority, wielding both arcane spells and political office. This society, driven by a thirst for knowledge and dominion, rapidly expanded its influence. From its capital, Minret House, a city of towering spires and arcane wonders, Tevinter legions marched across Thedas. They conquered numerous human tribes, absorbing them into their burgeoning empire, and subjugated many elven settlements, forcing the ancient elves into servitude. The elves, once a proud and free people, found their culture suppressed and their history rewritten by their Tevinter overlords. This era saw the systematic enslavement of vast populations, their lives and destinies dictated by the whims of the magisters. Blood magic, the practice of drawing power from living beings, was openly embraced, a testament to Tevinter's ruthless pursuit of power and its disregard for conventional morality. The Imperium's mages delved deep into forbidden knowledge, seeking to unlock the very secrets of creation. This relentless pursuit of power culminated in an event that would forever scar Thedas and set in motion a chain of cataclysmic events. Around 1195, Ancient, a group of the most powerful Tevinter magisters, led by the infamous Archon Thalcion, undertook a ritual of unprecedented scale and audacity. Convinced of their own divine right and possessing an arrogance born of unchecked power, they sought to literally enter the Golden City, the mythical seat of the Maker, the creator god of Thedas. They believed that by breaching the veil, the ethereal barrier separating the mundane world from the Fade, the realm of spirits and dreams, they could claim divine power for themselves, and so, through an immense act of blood magic and arcane might, they tore a hole in the fabric of reality. They succeeded in their terrible ambition, stepping into the Golden City itself. But what they found there was not the pristine divine realm they had envisioned. Their presence, tainted by their hubris and the blood magic they had employed, corrupted the very essence of the Golden City, twisting it into a desolate, nightmarish reflection of its former glory. It became the Black City, a silent, dark testament to their transgression, forever serving as a warning against mortal arrogance. The consequences of this sacrilege were immediate and devastating. The Magisters, now transformed into hideous, monstrous beings known as the First Darkspawn, were cast back into the mortal world. They emerged not from the surface, but from the forgotten depths of the Deep Roads, the ancient subterranean network built by the dwarves. This marked the beginning of the First Blight, a plague of unimaginable horror that would sweep across Thedas. Leading this grotesque horde was the archdemon Dumat, one of the old gods, dragons worshipped by the ancient Tevinter, now corrupted and twisted into a being of pure malice. Dumat, a colossal serpentine creature, rallied the Darkspawn, driving them in a relentless tide of destruction towards the surface world. The Deep Roads, once a symbol of dwarven ingenuity, became the conduits for this unimaginable evil, disgorging endless waves of Hurlocks, Genlocks, Shrieks, and Ogres onto the unsuspecting lands above. Faced with this existential threat, the disparate peoples of Thedas struggled to comprehend, let alone combat, the Darkspawn. Traditional armies were overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and relentless ferocity of the Horde. It was in this desperate hour that a new order emerged, born of necessity and courage. Around 1190, ancient, two legendary figures, Carinus and Garahel, founded the Grey Wardens. Recognizing that conventional warfare was insufficient against the Darkspawn, they sought a more radical solution. They discovered the ritual of the Joining, a perilous ceremony that imbues individuals with a small amount of Darkspawn blood, granting them immunity to the Blight's corruption and a unique sensory connection to the Horde. This came at a terrible cost, however, a shortened lifespan and the constant threat of succumbing to the taint. Despite the dangers, brave men and women from all races answered the call, dedicating their lives to the singular purpose of fighting the Darkspawn. They were a diverse order, bound not by nationality or creed, but by their shared vow to protect Thedas from the Blight. The First Blight raged for an agonizing 200 years, a period of unrelenting warfare and widespread devastation. Entire kingdoms were laid waste, their populations decimated, their lands scorched and tainted. The Darkspawn, led by Dumat, proved to be an almost unstoppable force. The Grey Wardens, though few in number, became the bulwark against this tide of darkness. They fought on every front, their sacrifices often overlooked but essential to the survival of civilization. The Dwarven kingdoms, particularly Orzammar, played a crucial role in this desperate struggle. Their mastery of underground warfare and their knowledge of the Deep Roads proved invaluable. They battled the Darkspawn in their own territory, often at immense cost, preventing the Horde from overwhelming the surface world from below. The Grey Wardens formed a vital alliance with the Dwarves, a partnership forged in the crucible of war, allowing them to coordinate efforts and launch strategic counterattacks against the Archdemon and its legions. Finally, after 2 centuries of relentless struggle, the Grey Wardens, with the crucial aid of the Dwarven armies, managed to corner the Archdemon Dumat. The final battle was a titanic clash, a desperate struggle for the very soul of Thedas. Through immense courage and sacrifice, the Grey Wardens managed to slay Dumat, severing its connection to the Darkspawn Horde. With the Archdemon's death, the Blight began to recede, the Darkspawn scattering and retreating back into the Deep Roads, leaderless and disorganized. The First Blight was finally over, but the scars it left on Thedas were profound and enduring. The world was forever changed, its populations diminished, its lands ravaged, and the memory of the Darkspawn forever etched into its collective consciousness. The Grey Wardens, though victorious, were forever marked by their ordeal, their order now a permanent fixture, standing eternal vigil against the return of the Blight. As the world slowly began to heal from the ravages of the First Blight, a new spiritual force began to stir in the southern lands, challenging the established order of the Tevinter Imperium. Around 870, Ancient, a prophetess named Andraste, emerged from the Alamari tribes, a charismatic figure who preached a revolutionary new faith. She spoke of a single, benevolent creator god, the Maker, who had abandoned humanity due to their hubris and sin, particularly the worship of the old gods and the practice of blood magic. Andraste's teachings offered hope and redemption, promising that the Maker would return to a world that embraced his love and righteousness. She condemned the Tevinter Imperium's practices, particularly their enslavement of peoples and their reliance on forbidden magic, as an affront to the Maker. Her message resonated deeply with the oppressed and the downtrodden, particularly the barbarian tribes who chafed under Tevinter rule. She united these disparate tribes, including her own Alamari and the Syrian, under a single banner, not of conquest, but of faith. Her movement grew into a powerful religious and military force, challenging the very foundations of the Tevinter Imperium. Andraste's crusade against Tevinter culminated in a series of dramatic military campaigns. Her forces, driven by fervent faith and a desire for liberation, marched north, engaging the Imperium's legions in fierce battles. The momentum of her movement was undeniable, and her armies, though often outmatched in terms of equipment and magical prowess, were fueled by an unwavering belief in their divine mission. Eventually, Andraste's armies reached the gates of Minret House, the magnificent capital of Tevinter, a city that epitomized the Imperium's power and pride. The siege of Minret House was a monumental event, a direct challenge to the heart of Tevinter authority. The city, a marvel of arcane architecture, was heavily fortified, but Andraste's followers pressed on, their faith unyielding. However, even in the midst of her greatest triumph, tragedy struck. Andraste's own husband, Mafaroth, consumed by jealousy and ambition, betrayed her to the Tevinter Archon Hessarian. Mafaroth, perhaps fearing Andraste's growing power or seeking to secure his own position, saw an opportunity to gain favor with the Imperium. His betrayal was a devastating blow, not only to Andraste personally, but to the morale of her movement. The specifics of his motives are debated, but the outcome was clear. Andraste was captured by Tevinter forces. In a cruel public spectacle, Andraste was condemned and burned at the stake in Minret House. Her execution was intended to crush her movement and extinguish the flame of her faith. Yet, in her final moments as the flames consumed her, Andraste remained defiant, her voice reportedly raised in prayer and forgiveness. Her death, far from silencing her message, transformed her into a martyr. Her sacrifice galvanized her followers, solidifying their resolve and deepening their commitment to her teachings. The image of the burning prophetess became a powerful symbol of resistance and faith, inspiring countless others to embrace her cause. What happened next was an unexpected twist of fate that would forever alter the religious landscape of Thedas. Archon Hessarian, the very man who had ordered Andraste's execution, was profoundly affected by her final moments. Witnessing her unwavering faith and her serene acceptance of her fate, even as she was consumed by fire, moved him deeply. He was reportedly so struck by her piety and dignity that he converted to her faith on the spot. In a stunning reversal, Hessarian ordered the immediate execution of those who had carried out Andraste's burning, including the priests and soldiers involved. This act, born of a sudden and profound spiritual awakening, shocked the Tevinter Imperium and sent ripples across Thedas. Following Andraste's martyrdom and Hessarian's conversion, her disciples, led by her most devoted followers, began to formalize her teachings. They established the Chantry, an organized religious institution dedicated to spreading the word of the Maker and the teachings of Andraste. The Chantry quickly grew in influence, its message of hope, redemption, and moral righteousness resonating with a world weary of conflict and the excesses of Tevinter. It provided a spiritual framework for countless individuals and communities, unifying them under a common faith. The Chantry's rise marked a significant shift in the cultural and political landscape of Thedas, laying the groundwork for a new era of religious dominance and the eventual decline of the Tevinter Imperium's absolute power. The Exalted Marches, a series of holy wars waged by the Chantry against those who resisted its dominion, were still to come, but the seeds of this future were sown in the fires of Andraste's martyrdom and the unexpected conversion of an Archon. As the Tower's Age dawned, roughly 800 years after the death of Andraste, the once unquestioned dominance of the Tevinter Imperium began to fray. The burgeoning Chantry, fueled by the fervor of Andraste's teachings, steadily chipped away at Tevinter's spiritual and political authority. While the Imperium still held vast swathes of land, its influence was undeniably waning, a slow, agonizing decline marked by internal strife and external pressures. This period of vulnerability would soon be tested by a familiar, terrifying threat, the Blight. The Second Blight erupted with the awakening of the archdemon Zazical, the dragon of command, from its slumber in the deep roads. Unlike the First Blight's archdemon, Dumat, Zazical was not found within the ancient dwarven thags of the Anderfels, but rather in the northern reaches of the Imperium, near the desolate Waking Sea. This awakening sent a fresh wave of darkspawn, the corrupted creatures born from the Blight, surging across Thedas. The Grey Wardens, the dedicated order of warriors sworn to fight the Blight, once again rose to the challenge. Though their numbers had been replenished since the First Blight, the scale of Zazical's horde was immense. The conflict raged for nearly a century, a brutal war of attrition that devastated countless lands. Major battles were fought across the Northern Imperium, the Free Marches, and even into the eastern reaches of Orlais. The Grey Wardens, supported by forces from various nations, including a nascent Orlais and the dwindling remnants of the Anderfels kingdoms, relentlessly pursued Zazical and its corrupted legions. The decisive confrontation, according to Chantry records and Grey Warden annals, occurred in the towering peaks of the Vimark Mountains, a region that would forever bear the scars of the conflict. It was here that the Grey Warden commander, a legendary figure whose name is now lost to time, faced Zazical directly. Through immense sacrifice and strategic brilliance, the archdemon was finally slain, and its essence, a fragment of the old god, was absorbed by the Grey Warden, ending the Second Blight. The victory, however, came at a staggering cost, leaving lands ravaged and populations decimated, further weakening the already struggling Tevinter Imperium. With the immediate threat of the Blight temporarily subdued, the Chantry, now a formidable political and religious power, turned its attention to other matters. The divine, the spiritual leader of the Chantry, declared the first Exalted March against the elves of the Dales. For centuries, the Dales, a sovereign elven nation nestled between Orlais and the Free Marches, had maintained its independence, adhering to the ancient elven pantheon and resisting conversion to the Maker's faith. The Chantry viewed this as an affront, a persistent heresy that could not be tolerated in a world increasingly united under the banner of Andraste. The official declaration cited the elves' paganism and their alleged refusal to share resources as justifications for the Holy War. The true motivation, however, was likely a blend of religious zeal, political ambition, and a desire to consolidate power. The Chantry's forces, a massive coalition of knights, templars, and levies drawn from various human kingdoms, descended upon the Dales with overwhelming force. The ensuing conflict was brutal and one-sided. The elves, though skilled warriors, were vastly outnumbered and outmatched by the organized might of the Chantry. Their ancient forests and sacred sites became battlegrounds, their homes reduced to ash. The Divine herself, a powerful and charismatic figure, is said to have personally overseen parts of the campaign, further galvanizing the human forces. The war raged for years, a systematic dismantling of elven culture and autonomy. Many elven cities, like the fabled Halamshiral, fell to the invaders. The atrocities committed during this period are still spoken of in hushed tones among the elves, tales of forced conversions, massacres, and the destruction of their heritage. Ultimately, the elven nation of the Dales was conquered and dismantled. Those elves who refused to convert to the Maker's faith were either slaughtered or driven into exile, forced to abandon their ancestral lands and seek refuge in human cities, where they were often relegated to squalid alienages. The remaining elves were compelled to adopt human customs and beliefs, their culture systematically suppressed. The Dales, once a vibrant symbol of elven independence, became merely another province, its history rewritten by the victors. Scarcely had the echoes of the Exalted March faded when Thedas was once again plunged into darkness. The Third Blight began with the awakening of the archdemon Toth, the dragon of fire, from its deep slumber. This time, the archdemon emerged from the Tevinter Imperium's southern borders, near the heavily contested region of the Anderfells. Toth was known for its particularly destructive power, its legions of darkspawn leaving a trail of fire and desolation in their wake. The Grey Wardens, still recovering from the Second Blight and the subsequent Exalted March, which had drawn away many potential recruits, once again bore the brunt of the initial onslaught. This blight, like its predecessors, spread rapidly, threatening to engulf all of Thedas. The newly formed Chantry, still basking in its victory over the Dales, found itself facing a different kind of war, one where faith alone was not enough to defeat the monstrous hordes. The Grey Wardens, though diminished, fought with their characteristic grim determination. They established strongholds, rallied what forces they could, and meticulously tracked Toth's movements. The war against Toth lasted for a shorter period than the Second Blight, but it was no less intense. Significant battles were fought across the Southern Imperium, the Free Marches, and even into the western reaches of Orlais. The culmination of the Third Blight occurred in the vast plains of the Free Marches, a region already scarred by previous conflicts. It was here, in a desperate, pitched battle, that the Grey Warden commander, a legendary figure whose identity remains shrouded in the mists of history, confronted and ultimately slew Archdemon Toth. The victory, though hard-won, once again left Thedas reeling, its nations weakened and its people weary. The Imperium, already struggling with internal dissent and the lingering effects of the previous blights, found its resources further strained, its borders increasingly vulnerable. As the Tower's age drew to a close and the first centuries of the Dragon Age began, a new and formidable power arrived on the shores of Thedas, the Qunari. These imposing horned humanoids, adherents of a strict philosophical and social system known as the Qun, sailed from the uncharted northern seas, their massive dreadnoughts appearing seemingly out of nowhere. Their arrival marked the beginning of a series of conflicts known as the Qunari Wars, a period of sustained warfare that would fundamentally reshape the political landscape of Thedas. The Qunari's initial landings were on the island of Seharon and the northern coastal regions of Parvalin, strategic locations that allowed them to establish a firm foothold in northern Thedas. Their motives were clear: to spread the Qun, their all-encompassing philosophy, to all peoples. They viewed the nations of Thedas as disorganized and unenlightened, ripe for conversion or conquest. The Tevinter Imperium, once the dominant power, found itself ill-equipped to repel this new invasion. Weakened by centuries of internal strife, the decline of its spiritual authority, the devastating effects of multiple blights, and the economic drain of the Exalted Marches, the Imperium's military might was a shadow of its former glory. Its once unrivaled magical prowess was still formidable, but it was no longer enough to stem the tide of the highly disciplined and technologically advanced Qunari. The Qunari, with their superior naval capabilities, their unique steel, and their unwavering adherence to the Qun, quickly gained ground. They systematically conquered Tevinter territories in the north, establishing their own settlements and imposing their way of life on the local populace. The Imperium's attempts to repel them were met with fierce resistance, often resulting in devastating defeats. The Qunari Wars were not a single, continuous conflict, but but rather a series of protracted campaigns, raids, and sieges that spanned centuries. The fighting was brutal, characterized by large-scale naval battles, sieges of fortified cities, and intense magical duels between Tevinter mages and Qunari Sarabas, their magically shackled mages. The Qunari's unique military structure, with its emphasis on collective action and specialized roles, proved highly effective against the more traditional, individualistic armies of Tevinter. The Imperium, desperate to hold onto its dwindling power, committed vast resources to the conflict, further depleting its treasury and manpower. These wars had a profound and lasting impact on Thedas. They solidified the Qunari's presence in the north, forever altering the geopolitical map. For Tevinter, the Qunari Wars were a catastrophic blow, accelerating its decline and forcing it to concede vast territories. The once mighty Imperium, now a mere shadow of its former self, was forced to contend with a powerful, unyielding enemy on its doorstep, a constant reminder of its lost glory. The Qunari Wars, alongside the lingering threat of future blights and the internal struggles for power, ensured that Tevinter would never again reclaim its ancient dominance, ushering in an era of fractured power and perpetual conflict across Thedas. The cataclysmic events of the Exalted Marches, particularly the devastating outcomes for the Tevinter Imperium, had left the continent of Thedas in a precarious state of political instability and simmering resentment. While the Chantry's influence grew and the various human kingdoms, dwarven thags, and elven communities grappled with their own internal struggles, a far more ancient and insidious threat was stirring beneath the surface. It is against this backdrop, in the year 930 Dragon, that the world would be plunged into an era of unprecedented darkness, marking the beginning of the Fifth Blight. This new age, appropriately named the Dragon Age, would witness the resurgence of the Darkspawn, a corrupted race of subterranean creatures driven by a singular destructive purpose, to find and awaken an old god, transforming it into an archdemon. For centuries, the Grey Wardens, an ancient order of warriors and mages dedicated to fighting the Darkspawn, had been the primary bulwark against these incursions. Their vigilance had largely kept the Blights at bay, but the Fifth Blight would prove to be a test unlike any before, pushing Thedas to the very brink of annihilation. The catalyst for this global crisis was the awakening of Earthemiel, the old god of beauty, who, once corrupted by the Darkspawn taint, rose as the archdemon. This monumental event signaled the official commencement of the Fifth Blight, unleashing hordes of Darkspawn upon the surface world. Their numbers were staggering, their ferocity unmatched, and their presence instilled a primal fear in the hearts of all who witnessed their relentless advance. The Archdemon, a creature of immense power and malevolent intelligence, served as the hive mind for the Darkspawn, directing their movements and amplifying their destructive capabilities. Its awakening sent shockwaves across the continent, alerting the various kingdoms to the dire threat that loomed. In the kingdom of Ferelden, the first and most immediate target of the Darkspawn's wrath, King Kylan Merrick, a young and ambitious monarch, recognized the gravity of the situation. Driven by a desire to prove his mettle and protect his people, he rallied his forces, preparing for a decisive confrontation. Alongside him stood Loghain mac Tir, a legendary hero of Ferelden's War of Independence against Orlais. Loghain, a seasoned commander and a figure of immense respect, was King Kaelin's father-in-law and his most trusted general. Together, they led the Ferelden army to Ostagar, an ancient fortress strategically located at the southern edge of the Korkari Wilds, a vast and dangerous wilderness known to harbor Darkspawn. Ostagar was chosen as the staging ground for the impending battle, a place where they hoped to halt the Darkspawn's advance and turn the tide of the Blight. As the Ferelden army converged at Ostagar, so too did the Grey Wardens, an order whose very existence was predicated on confronting such threats. Among them was Duncan, a veteran Grey Warden and a man of unwavering resolve, whose wisdom and experience were invaluable. He was accompanied by Alistair, a young and somewhat naive Grey Warden, who, despite his inexperience, possessed a strong moral compass and a surprising wit. The Grey Wardens, though few in number, brought with them centuries of knowledge regarding the Darkspawn, their tactics, and, most crucially, the means to defeat an archdemon. Their arrival at Ostagar was a beacon of hope for the beleaguered Ferelden forces, a testament to the fact that not all was lost. It was during this critical juncture, as the storm clouds of war gathered over Ostagar, that the fate of Thedas would become inextricably linked with the actions of a single individual, you, the player character. Your journey into the heart of the Fifth Blight began with your origin story, a pivotal narrative thread that explored your background and the circumstances that led to your recruitment into the Grey Wardens. Whether you were a human noble, a city elf, a Dalish elf, a dwarf commoner, a dwarf noble, or a mage, your path ultimately converged with Duncan's, who, recognizing a unique spark within you, saw the potential for a Grey Warden. Each origin story offered a distinct perspective on the social and political landscape of Ferelden, highlighting the various injustices, prejudices, and power struggles that defined the era. As a human noble, you might have experienced the betrayal of a trusted band, forcing you to flee your ancestral home. As a city elf, you might have witnessed the oppression of your people, culminating in a desperate act of defiance. A Dalish elf might have faced the encroachment of human civilization on sacred lands, while a dwarf commoner might have struggled against the rigid caste system of Orzammar. A dwarf noble, on the other hand, might have been embroiled in a bitter power struggle within the dwarven deeps. And, as a mage, you would have navigated the strictures and inherent dangers of the Circle of Magi, a powerful organization that sought to control and contain magical abilities. Regardless of your initial circumstances, Duncan's intervention provided an escape from your immediate troubles, offering a new purpose and a chance to make a difference in a world teetering on the brink. Your recruitment into the Grey Wardens was not merely an invitation, it was a calling, a solemn oath to protect Thedas from the Darkspawn at all costs. This commitment was solidified through the joining ritual, a harrowing and transformative ceremony performed on all new Grey Warden recruits. At Ostagar, under the watchful eyes of Duncan and the other Grey Wardens, you and Alistair, along with a few other hopefuls, underwent this ancient rite. The joining involved consuming a concoction of Darkspawn blood, a dangerous act that either granted immunity to the Darkspawn taint or resulted in a swift and agonizing death. Those who survived were forever changed, gaining a heightened resistance to the taint and a unique connection to the archdemon, allowing them to sense its presence and, ultimately, to deliver the killing blow. This ritual, while perilous, was essential for creating effective Darkspawn hunters, imbuing them with the very essence of their enemy to better understand and combat it. The Grey Wardens believed that only by embracing a part of the darkness could they truly stand against it. However, the grand strategy devised by King Kaelin and Loghain, along with the Grey Wardens, was destined for a tragic and unforeseen betrayal. As the Battle of Ostagar raged, with the Ferelden forces valiantly holding the line against the relentless Darkspawn hordes, Loghain mac Tyr, in a shocking act of perfidy, withdrew his forces from the battlefield. His motivations were complex and driven by a deep-seated distrust of the Orlesian Empire, a former oppressor of Ferelden, and a growing fear that King Kaelin's ambitions would lead to the kingdom's ruin. Loghain believed that a strategic retreat was necessary to preserve Ferelden's strength, even if it meant sacrificing the king and the Grey Wardens. This act of desertion left King Kaelin and the remaining Ferelden soldiers exposed and vulnerable, turning the tide of the battle decisively in favor of the Darkspawn. The consequences of Loghain's betrayal were immediate and devastating. King Kaelin, fighting valiantly on the front lines, was overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of Darkspawn and ultimately fell to the Archdemon Orthemiel itself. His death was a crushing blow to Ferelden, leaving the kingdom leaderless and demoralized in the face of an unprecedented threat. The Grey Wardens, caught in the chaotic retreat of the Ferelden army and the overwhelming Darkspawn assault, were nearly wiped out. Duncan, a beacon of strength and courage, fought to his last breath, but even his legendary prowess was not enough to stem the tide. In the aftermath of the battle, amidst the carnage and despair, only 2 Grey Wardens remained, the newly joined Warden, Yu, and Alistair. Their survival was a miracle, a testament to their resilience and, perhaps, a whisper of destiny. With Ostagar lost and the Grey Wardens decimated, you and Alistair found yourselves as the last hope for Ferelden and, indeed, for all of Thedas. Your immediate task, entrusted to you by Duncan before his heroic demise, was to invoke the Grey Warden treaties. These ancient treaties, forged centuries ago, bound the rulers of Thedas to provide aid and resources to the Grey Wardens during a blight. To invoke them, however, required proving your authority as a Grey Warden and persuading skeptical leaders to set aside their political squabbles and unite against the common enemy. This daunting mission necessitated a journey across Ferelden, a land now ravaged by Darkspawn and gripped by political turmoil. Your escape from Ostagar was a desperate scramble for survival, navigating the treacherous Korkari wilds while evading Darkspawn patrols. Your path led you and Alistair to the small village of Lothering, a seemingly peaceful settlement that offered a brief respite from the horrors of the Blight. Here, you encountered various individuals, some seeking refuge, others attempting to profit from the chaos. However, Lothering's tranquility was short-lived. The relentless advance of the Darkspawn meant that no place was truly safe. Soon after your arrival, Lothering was overrun, its inhabitants scattered or slaughtered, a stark reminder of the Blight's destructive power and the urgency of your mission. The fall of Lothering underscored the rapid deterioration of the situation in Ferelden and the ever-present danger that stalked every corner of the kingdom. With Lothering lost, your journey continued, driven by the desperate need to find allies and invoke the treaties. Your next destination was Redcliffe, a fortified village and the seat of Arl Eamon Garen, a powerful and influential nobleman who was also Alistair's half-brother. Arl Eamon was known for his loyalty to King Kaelin and his strong sense of duty, making him a crucial potential ally. However, upon your arrival, you discovered that Arl Eamon was gravely ill, poisoned by an unknown assailant. His condition was dire, rendering him incapable of aiding your cause. This unexpected setback added another layer of complexity to your already challenging mission. The poisoning of a key ally highlighted the political intrigue and machinations that continued to plague Ferelden, even in the face of a world-ending threat. The only hope for Arl Eamon's recovery, and consequently for gaining his support, lay with the Circle of Magi, a powerful organization of mages residing in the majestic Circle Tower. The Circle Tower, a formidable structure built on an island in Lake Calenhad, was a center of magical learning and a place where mages were trained and, more importantly, monitored to prevent them from succumbing to the temptations of demonic influence. Despite the inherent distrust between Templars, the Chantry's military arm tasked with overseeing mages, and mages, the urgency of Arl Amon's condition compelled you and Alistair to seek their aid. The mages possessed knowledge of powerful healing spells and arcane remedies that might be able to counteract the poison afflicting the Arl. Your arrival at the Circle Tower, however, revealed a new and terrifying crisis. The tower, a supposed bastion of order and control, had fallen prey to a demonic infestation. A powerful demon, Uldred, had seized control, manipulating the mages and Templars and plunging the entire tower into chaos. The very fabric of reality within the tower had been warped, with the Fade, the ethereal realm where spirits and demons reside, bleeding into the physical world. This meant that not only were the mages unable to help Arl Amon, but they themselves were in desperate need of assistance. Recognizing the immediate threat and the potential to gain the mage's allegiance, you, the Warden, took it upon yourself to resolve the crisis within the Circle Tower. This involved navigating the twisted corridors of the tower, battling demonic entities, and making difficult choices that would determine the fate of the mages and Templars trapped within. You ventured into the Fade itself, a dreamlike dimension where your mental strength and resolve were put to the ultimate test. Within the Fade, you confronted your own fears and vulnerabilities, and battled powerful demons that sought to corrupt your mind. Your actions within the Fade were crucial, as they directly impacted the stability of the tower and the sanity of its inhabitants. Ultimately, you confronted Uldred, the demon responsible for the infestation, and, through courage and tactical prowess, defeated him. Your success in cleansing the Circle Tower of its demonic influence not only saved the mages and Templars, but also earned you their gratitude and, most importantly, their allegiance. The first enchanter, Irving, grateful for your intervention, pledged the mages' support to the Grey Warden's cause, providing a much-needed contingent of powerful magic users to aid in the fight against the Blight. This pivotal victory secured a vital ally and marked a significant step forward in your quest to unite Ferelden against the encroaching darkness. The Warden, now bearing the heavy mantle of leadership, understood that the fate of Ferelden, and indeed Thedas, rested on their ability to forge a unified front against the encroaching darkness. Their first journey of recruitment led them deep into the ancient and mystical Brisilian Forest, a place steeped in elven history and whispered legends. This vast, untamed woodland, protected by the Dalish elves, was not easily traversed. The Dalish, descendants of the ancient elves who refused to live within human cities, maintained a nomadic lifestyle, fiercely guarding their traditions and their independence from the Shemlin, their term for humans. The particular clan the Warden sought, the Sabre clan, was known for their wisdom and their deep connection to the forest itself. Upon entering the Brisilian, the Warden encountered a landscape scarred by an ancient, seemingly unending conflict. For generations, the Dalish had been locked in a bitter struggle with a pack of werewolves, monstrous creatures of both legend and terrifying reality. The Dalish believed these werewolves were a curse, a blight upon their sacred lands, and countless skirmishes had left both sides decimated. The Warden, through careful investigation and diplomacy, began to unravel the true nature of this age-old animosity. They discovered the tragic tale of a powerful elven mage, Lady Cyril, and her lover, the human chieftain Athras, whose ill-fated romance and a desperate, misguided attempt to cure a lycanthropic curse had led to the creation of the werewolf pack. It was a story of betrayal, misunderstanding, and a magical curse that had spiraled out of control. The Warden learned that the werewolves were not simply mindless beasts, but sentient beings trapped in a horrific form, their minds twisted by the curse. The pack leader, a particularly cunning and ancient werewolf named the Grand Oak, sought an end to their suffering, as did the leader of the Dalish keeper Zathrian. Zathrian, however, was bound by a vengeful oath he had taken against the werewolves, an oath rooted in the death of his own family at their hands. The Warden was presented with a moral quandary: side with the Dalish and eradicate the werewolves, or seek a more humane solution. Ultimately, the Warden chose the path of reconciliation, convincing Zathrian to lift the ancient curse, a powerful act of magic that required his own life force. This selfless act dissolved the curse, freeing the werewolves from their monstrous forms and allowing them to finally find peace. In return for resolving this generations-long conflict and bringing peace to their forest, the grateful Dalish elves pledged their support to the Grey Wardens, offering their skilled archers and knowledge of the land to the fight against the Blight. With the allegiance of the Dalish secured, the Warden turned their attention to the subterranean realm of the dwarves. The journey into the deep roads, the vast network of tunnels and tags, dwarven cities, that once spanned beneath the entire continent, was a perilous one. These ancient highways, now largely overrun by the Darkspawn, were a testament to the former glory and subsequent decline of the Dwarven Empire. The Warden sought the last great dwarven city, Orzammar, a bastion of dwarven civilization carved into the very heart of the mountains. Orzammar, a marvel of engineering and craftsmanship, was a society steeped in tradition, honor, and rigid social structures. However, upon arrival, the Warden discovered the city was embroiled in a fierce succession crisis. The recently deceased King Endrin Edikin had left no clear heir, plunging the city into a political maelstrom. Two powerful candidates vied for the throne: Prince Palin Edukin, the ambitious and reform-minded youngest son of the former king, and Lord Pyrrell Harrowmont, a traditionalist and respected elder noble. Both factions sought the Warden's aid, promising dwarven support against the Blight in exchange for their backing. Navigating Orzamar's intricate web of political intrigue proved to be as dangerous as fighting the Darkspawn. The Warden was forced to delve into the city's underbelly, uncovering plots, betrayals, and long-held grievances. They undertook quests for both Palin and Harrowmont, witnessing firsthand the stark differences in their ideologies. Palin, though ruthless in his ambition, championed progressive reforms that would challenge the rigid caste system and open up trade with the surface world. Harrowmont, while honorable, clung to ancient traditions, fearing that change would erode the very essence of dwarven identity. The Warden's decisions had far-reaching consequences, influencing the lives of countless dwarves, from the noble houses to the casteless, the lowest rung of dwarven society. Ultimately, the Warden had to make a choice, a decision that would determine the future of Orzammar. If they sided with Balin, they would help him expose Harrowmont's weaknesses and consolidate his power, often through morally ambiguous means. If they chose Harrowmont, they would help him secure the support of the noble houses and discredit Palin's claims, often by upholding the established order. Regardless of the chosen king, the Warden's intervention brought an end to the civil unrest. With the new king firmly established on the throne, the dwarves of Orzammar, recognizing the existential threat of the Blight and the Warden's instrumental role in their internal stability, pledged their formidable warriors and their engineering prowess to the cause. This alliance was crucial, as dwarven knowledge of the deep roads and their skill in underground combat were unparalleled. With the mages of the Circle Tower, the Dalish elves, and the dwarves of Orzammar now allied with the Grey Wardens, the Warden Commander and Alistair had successfully gathered a diverse and powerful coalition. These allies represented the disparate factions of Ferelden, often at odds with each other, but now united by the common enemy. The next crucial step was to return to Redcliffe, the very place where the Warden's journey against the Blight had truly begun to gather momentum. Arl Aemon Garin, the Terran of Gwarin and a respected figure in Ferelden, had been gravely ill, struck down by a mysterious magical ailment. His illness had been a major contributing factor to the political instability plaguing the realm, as his absence left a power vacuum. The Warden, having secured the sacred ashes of Andraste from the Temple of Sacred Ashes, possessed the only known cure. Upon their return to Redcliffe, the Warden administered the ashes to Arl Aemon, a ritual steeped in ancient faith and powerful magic. Miraculously, the Arl was cured, his strength and lucidity returning. Aemon, a man of great influence and unwavering loyalty to the late King Kaelin, was appalled by Loghain's actions. He immediately recognized the need for a legitimate challenge to Loghain's regency and, in his restored health, called for a Landsmeet. The Landsmeet was the highest legislative and judicial body in Ferelden, a gathering of the nobility, Arls, and bands, with the power to depose a monarch or regent. It was the only legitimate avenue to challenge Loghain's authority and expose his treachery to the entire realm. The Landsmeet convened in Denerim, the capital city, a place now teeming with tension and suspicion. Loghain, a master manipulator and a cunning politician, had consolidated his power, spreading propaganda against the Grey Wardens and painting them as traitors. The Warden and their allies faced an uphill battle. At the Landsmeet, the Warden, supported by Arl Aemon and other loyal nobles, presented their evidence against Loghain. They recounted his betrayal at Ostagar, his abandonment of King Kaelin, and his subsequent seizure of power. Loghain, in turn, vehemently denied the accusations, attempting to discredit the Warden and their witnesses. The proceedings were fraught with political maneuvering, impassioned speeches, and veiled threats. Loghain's daughter, Anora Mactyr, who had been married to King Kaelin and was now Loghain's pawn, also played a significant role, attempting to protect her father's position while also safeguarding her own claim to the throne. The Warden's ability to persuade the assembled nobility, to present a compelling case, and to rally support against Loghain was paramount. Ultimately, the Landsmeet reached a critical juncture. Loghain's treachery was undeniable, and the weight of the evidence, coupled with the support of powerful figures like Arl Aemon, turned the tide against him. Faced with overwhelming opposition, Loghain was defeated. His fate then lay in the Warden's hands. The Warden could choose to execute him for his crimes against the Crown and the Grey Wardens, a swift and decisive act of justice. Alternatively, a more controversial option presented itself. Loghain could be spared, and through a ritual known as the Joining, inducted into the Grey Wardens. This choice, often advocated by Alistair, was a difficult one, as it meant accepting a man who had betrayed them into their ranks. However, it also meant gaining a powerful, albeit reluctant, warrior whose knowledge of Ferelden's military and terrain could be invaluable against the Archdemon. The decision had profound implications for the political landscape and for the personal relationships within the Warden's party. With Loghain's fate sealed, the question of succession for the throne of Ferelden arose. Three main outcomes were possible, each with its own political ramifications. Anora Mactyr, as the widow of King Kaelin, had a strong claim to the throne. If she was crowned queen, she would rule in her own right. potentially continuing some of her father's policies or forging a new path. Alternatively, Alistair Theron, as the last living heir of King Merrick and therefore the true heir to the Theron dynasty, could be placed on the throne. This would restore the traditional royal line, but might be met with resistance from those who preferred Anora's more established political connections. A third option, often considered a compromise, was a joint rule between Anora and Alistair, uniting their claims and potentially bringing stability to a fractured realm. The Warden's influence in this decision was absolute, shaping the future leadership of Ferelden. With the political turmoil resolved and a new monarch or monarchs on the throne, the focus shifted entirely to the impending confrontation with the Archdemon. The Grey Wardens, now bolstered by their diverse allies and with the full support of Ferelden's new government, prepared for the final battle in Denerim. The capital city, once a symbol of Ferelden's strength, was now under siege, its streets swarming with darkspawn. As the final preparations were underway, a grim truth was revealed to the Warden. The only way to truly kill an Archdemon was for a Grey Warden to strike the final blow. However, this act was a suicide mission. The Archdemon's corrupted blood, upon its death, would flow into the Grey Warden, overwhelming and killing them in a process known as the Old God's Curse. This revelation cast a heavy shadow over the impending battle, knowing that one of their own would have to make the ultimate sacrifice. It was at this critical juncture that the ancient ritual of the Dark Ritual was revealed. Morrigan, the enigmatic apostate mage who had accompanied the Warden since the Korkari Wilds, presented a solution, albeit a controversial one. She explained that if a Grey Warden were to engage in a consensual act with a willing partner, the Archdemon's soul upon its death would be transferred into the unborn child, thus sparing the Grey Warden who struck the final blow. This ritual, a desperate measure born of ancient magic, offered a way to avert the inevitable sacrifice. The Warden was faced with a profound moral and personal choice: accept Morrigan's proposal, understanding the implications for the child, or allow one of the Grey Wardens to die. The decision of who would perform the ritual, and with whom, was a deeply personal one, impacting the Warden's relationships and their own sense of morality. Finally, the moment arrived. The Warden, leading the combined forces of Ferelden, the mages of the Circle, the skilled archers of the Dalish Elves, the formidable warriors of Orzammar, and the loyal soldiers of Ferelden, launched a desperate assault on Denerim. The streets of the capital became a brutal battlefield, a maelstrom of steel, magic, and darkspawn corruption. The Archdemon, Earthamiel, the old god of beauty, now fully awakened and twisted into a grotesque, winged monstrosity, soared above the city, raining destruction upon the allied forces. The climax of the Fifth Blight unfolded in a desperate struggle against Earthamiel. The Archdemon was a formidable foe, its power immense, its roars echoing through the city. The allied forces fought with incredible bravery, pushing through the darkspawn hordes to reach the beast. The Warden, at the forefront of the assault, engaged Earthamiel in a fierce battle, utilizing all their skills and the combined might of their companions. The defeat of Earthamiel marked the end of the Fifth Blight, a cataclysmic event that had threatened to consume all of Thedas. The final blow, as foretold, had to be struck by a Grey Warden. If the Dark Ritual had been performed, the Warden who delivered the killing strike would survive, their life spared by the ancient magic. If the ritual was not performed, then the Grey Warden who struck the final blow, whether it be the player Warden, Alistair, or even a recruited Loghain, would make the ultimate sacrifice, their life extinguished as the Archdemon's soul consumed them. This heroic act, whether it was a sacrifice or a miraculous survival, brought an end to the terror of the Blight, ushering in a new era for Ferelden. The impact of the Fifth Blight and the Warden's pivotal role in its defeat would forever be etched into the annals of history, shaping the future of Thedas for generations to come. Following the defeat of the Archdemon Earthamiel and the end of the Fifth Blight, the land of Ferelden began its slow, arduous journey toward recovery. The Grey Wardens, though diminished, had once again proven their indispensable role in protecting Thedas. It is in this period of rebuilding, specifically in the year 931 Dragon, that our story continues, shifting focus to the newly appointed Warden Commander of Ferelden. This individual, whether the hero of Ferelden or another Grey Warden who survived the Blight, was tasked with the monumental challenge of re-establishing the Grey Warden's presence and ensuring such a devastating invasion could never again cripple the kingdom. The Warden Commander's first priority was the reconstruction of the Grey Warden Order itself. With the majority of their forces either fallen in battle or scattered, a new stronghold was needed, and a new generation of wardens had to be recruited and trained. The ancient Grey Warden fortress of Vigil's Keep, located in the northern reaches of Ferelden within the region known as the Waking Sea, was designated as this new headquarters. This formidable castle, a testament to dwarven engineering and human ingenuity, had stood for centuries, a silent sentinel overlooking the Amaranthine Marches. However, as the Warden Commander made their way to Vigil's Keep, they found it not as a sanctuary, but as a battlefield. The castle was under siege, not by bandits or rival nobles, but by the very creatures the Grey Wardens were sworn to destroy, the Darkspawn. Upon arrival, the Warden Commander, accompanied by a small contingent of loyal followers, immediately engaged the Darkspawn forces. The battle for Vigil's Keep was fierce, a brutal reintroduction to the constant threat that lurked beneath the surface of Thedas. Wave after wave of Hurlocks, Genlocks, Shrieks, and Ogres assaulted the ancient walls, attempting to breach the defenses and overwhelm the remaining garrison. The Warden Commander's strategic prowess and combat expertise, honed during the Blight, were put to the test. They personally led the charge, rallying the defenders and pushing back the Darkspawn tide. The siege was eventually broken, the Darkspawn driven from the immediate vicinity of the keep, but the victory was hard-won and underscored the persistent danger. Securing Vigil's keep was merely the first step. The surrounding lands of the Waking Sea, including the city of Amaranthine, also needed to be pacified and protected from lingering Darkspawn threats. Patrols were established, skirmishes fought, and the region slowly brought back under a semblance of order, all under the vigilant eye of the new Warden Commander. With Vigil's keep secured and the immediate threat neutralized, the arduous task of rebuilding the Grey Warden Order truly began. The Warden Commander understood that the strength of the Grey Wardens lay not just in their numbers, but in the diversity of their recruits. The calling, the ritual that transforms a recruit into a Grey Warden by having them drink Darkspawn blood, was a perilous process, and only a select few survived. Therefore, the recruitment pool had to be broad. The Warden Commander began actively seeking out individuals with potential, regardless of their past or social standing. This included hardened warriors, cunning rogues, and even mages, whose magical abilities offered a distinct advantage against the Darkspawn. Former criminals seeking redemption or new purpose were offered a chance to serve. Disgraced nobles, disillusioned commoners, and even those with questionable pasts were considered, for the Blight had taught that courage and skill could be found in the most unexpected places. This inclusive approach was crucial for replenishing the ranks and ensuring the Grey Wardens had the varied expertise needed to face future threats. However, the Darkspawn encountered in the Waking Sea and around Vigil's Keep were different. They exhibited an unsettling level of organization and intelligence, far beyond the mindless ferocity typically associated with their kind. These were not the scattered, disorganized remnants of a defeated Blight army. They communicated, they strategized, and they even spoke. This unprecedented development deeply disturbed the Warden Commander. The idea of talking Darkspawn was an anomaly, a terrifying deviation from everything known about these creatures. Traditionally, Darkspawn were driven by the song of the Archdemon and a primal urge to corrupt and destroy. Their speech, when it occurred, was usually limited to guttural growls or fragmented, corrupted words. But these new Darkspawn were articulate, capable of complex thought, and clearly operating under a unified command. The investigation into these intelligent Darkspawn quickly became the Warden Commander's primary objective. Who or what was leading them? What was their ultimate goal? The answers began to emerge through interrogations, intercepted communications, and the analysis of Darkspawn behavior. It became clear that these talking Darkspawn were not simply an evolutionary anomaly, but were being directed by a powerful singular entity. This entity was known as the Architect. The Architect was not an archdemon, nor was it a typical Darkspawn alpha. It was something entirely new, a being of immense intellect and mysterious origins, seemingly manipulating the Darkspawn for its own inscrutable purposes. The implications were staggering. A Darkspawn capable of strategic thought on a grand scale, orchestrating its forces with a precision that rivaled human generals. The trail of the Architect eventually led the Warden Commander to the desolate and spectral region known as the Black Marsh. This eerie, fog-shrouded land, steeped in tragedy and haunted by restless spirits, was a stark contrast to the verdant lands of Ferelden. Here, the Warden Commander encountered the spectral form of the Baroness, a tormented spirit trapped between worlds, forever reliving the horrors of her past. The Baroness's story was one of betrayal and despair, her essence bound to the Black Marsh by a powerful magical artifact. To navigate the Black Marsh and uncover its secrets, the Warden Commander had to contend with the Baroness's grief and the monstrous golem that guarded her domain. The golem, a massive construct of stone and metal, was a formidable foe, a relic of an age-long past, now animated by dark magic and serving as a guardian of the marsh's secrets. Defeating the golem and pacifying the Baroness's spirit was a challenging endeavor, requiring both martial prowess and a keen understanding of the supernatural. Through these encounters, the Warden Commander began to piece together fragments of the Architect's activities, realizing that the entity's influence extended far beyond simple military command. The true scope of the Architect's ambition was gradually revealed. The talking Darkspawn were not just a new breed, they were the result of the Architect's radical experiments. The Architect, a unique and highly intelligent Darkspawn, harbored a revolutionary goal: to sever the Darkspawn's connection to the old gods. For millennia, the Darkspawn had been driven by the song of the Archdemons, a primal call that compelled them to spread corruption and seek out the slumbering old gods. The Architect believed this connection was a curse, an endless cycle of blights that doomed the Darkspawn as much as it did the surface world. Its experiments were an attempt to break this cycle, to free the Darkspawn from the influence of the old gods, and, in doing so, potentially end the blights forever. This revelation was profoundly unsettling for the Warden Commander. Was the Architect a new kind of threat, or an unlikely, albeit monstrous, ally in the fight against the Blight, the lines between good and evil, savior and destroyer, began to blur. To further understand the architect's methods and motives, the Warden Commander journeyed to the ancient dwarven Thag of Herald. Thags are vast, subterranean cities carved into the deep earth, once thriving centers of dwarven civilization, now mostly ruins overrun by darkspawn. Herald, like many Thags, had fallen during the First Blight and remained a dangerous, forgotten place. Within its crumbling halls, the Warden Commander battled legions of darkspawn, encountering new, more resilient variants, further evidence of the architect's ongoing genetic manipulations. Amidst the ruins, the Warden Commander uncovered ancient dwarven technology, including powerful golems and intricate mechanisms, some of which had been repurposed or corrupted by the darkspawn. These discoveries provided crucial insights into the architect's advanced understanding of both magic and engineering, showcasing its ability to adapt and utilize whatever resources it could find. It was within the depths of Herald, or in the architect's hidden stronghold, that the Warden Commander finally came face to face with the architect itself. This encounter was unlike any other the Warden Commander had experienced. The architect was not a mindless beast, but a being capable of rational discourse, expressing its motivations and explaining its grand, terrifying vision. It was a unique darkspawn, an entity that had somehow transcended the typical limitations of its kind. The architect explained its desire to end the Blights, not through destruction, but through liberation. It sought to free the darkspawn from the compulsion of the old gods, believing that without their influence, the darkspawn could evolve beyond their destructive nature. This confrontation forced the Warden Commander to grapple with a profound ethical dilemma. Could a darkspawn, the sworn enemy of all life, truly possess a noble goal? Was its method, which involved horrific experiments and the creation of a new, intelligent breed of darkspawn, justifiable if it led to the ultimate cessation of the Blights? The architect's very existence challenged the core tenets of the Grey Warden's purpose. The architect, a unique, intelligent darkspawn, reveals his true motivations to the Warden Commander. Unlike typical darkspawn driven solely by the call of the old gods, the architect is a visionary, albeit a deeply flawed one. He explains that his ultimate goal is to free all darkspawn from the parasitic influence of the old gods, thereby preventing future blights. His method, however, is controversial and ethically dubious. He seeks to sever the connection between darkspawn and the old gods through experimental means, even if it means sacrificing countless darkspawn in the process. The Warden Commander is thus presented with a profound moral dilemma: to kill the architect, ending his dangerous experiments but potentially dooming future generations to the relentless cycle of blights, or to allow his controversial research to continue, hoping for a long-term solution at a terrible cost. This choice highlights the complex ethical landscape of Thedas, where even the most monstrous of creatures might harbor intentions that, while twisted, aim for a greater good. As the Warden Commander grapples with this difficult decision, further investigations into the strange behavior of the intelligent darkspawn lead to a horrifying discovery: the existence of the Mother. Not merely a powerful broodmother, but the Mother, a monstrous entity of immense size and power, the very source of these new intelligent darkspawn. She is a grotesque, sentient being, a true nightmare made flesh, capable of birthing legions of highly evolved and strategically minded darkspawn. Her existence fundamentally alters the understanding of the darkspawn threat, revealing a new, organized intelligence behind the chaos. The trail of the Mother leads the Warden Commander and their allies deep into the treacherous Drake's Fall Mountains, a desolate and dangerous region known for its harsh terrain and ancient secrets. Here, the Warden Commander encounters the Children, a new breed of darkspawn, unlike any seen before. These are not the mindless, snarling beasts of past blights, but powerful, cunning, and highly organized individuals, each possessing a unique set of abilities and a chilling intelligence. They act as the Mother's elite guard and lieutenants, demonstrating a terrifying capacity for strategic thought and coordinated attacks. Their presence underscores the unprecedented nature of this new darkspawn threat, hinting at a level of organization and purpose previously thought impossible for their kind. Through further investigation and harrowing encounters, the Warden Commander uncovers the Mother's true, terrifying ambition. She does not seek to merely unleash another blight in the traditional sense, but to create an entirely new, independent blight, one that is not reliant on the awakening of an old god. Her goal is to dominate Thedas, to reshape it in her own image, with her children as the architects of this new, horrifying world order. This revelation is a stark departure from previous blight scenarios, where the darkspawn were primarily driven by the call of an old god. The Mother represents a self-sustaining, self-propagating threat, a blight of pure, unadulterated darkspawn, while making her a far more dangerous and existential threat to all life in Thedas. Her vision of a darkspawn-ruled world, free from the influence of the old gods, is a chilling prospect, suggesting a future where humanity and other races are utterly subjugated or annihilated. Faced with this unprecedented crisis, the Warden Commander is presented with a final, agonizing choice: to ally with the Architect, a creature whose methods are morally reprehensible, but whose ultimate goal aligns with the prevention of blights, or to eliminate both the Architect and the Mother. severing all ties to this new, intelligent Darkspawn threat. Each path carries immense risks and potential rewards. Allying with the Architect means tolerating his controversial experiments and the suffering they inflict, but it could lead to a permanent solution to the Blight. Eliminating both means a return to the known threat of old god-driven blights, but it removes the immediate existential danger posed by the mother and her children. This choice is a testament to the Grey Warden's difficult role, often forcing them to make decisions that defy conventional morality for the greater good. The weight of Ferelden's future and potentially all of Thedas rests squarely on the Warden Commander's shoulders. Regardless of the Warden Commander's decision regarding the Architect, the immediate threat of the Mother demands action. The Warden Commander, leading the Grey Wardens of Vigil's Keep and their newly forged allies, prepares for a final, desperate assault on the Mother's lair. This grand alliance includes not only the seasoned Grey Wardens, but also the various factions and individuals who have joined the Warden Commander's cause throughout their journey in Amaranthine. The loyal soldiers of the Arling of Amaranthine, the cunning crows, the resilient elves of the Dales, and even some reformed criminals. Each group brings their unique strengths and expertise to bear against the overwhelming might of the Mother's forces. The assault is a brutal, protracted battle, a testament to the ferocity of the children and the sheer scale of the Mother's power. Elite Darkspawn, enhanced and intelligent, swarm the approaches, employing tactics and coordination previously unheard of from their kind. The Grey Wardens and their allies fight tooth and nail, suffering heavy casualties, but driven by the knowledge that the fate of Thedas hangs in the balance. Finally, after a grueling and costly campaign, the Warden Commander confronts the Mother herself within the deepest recesses of her lair. The battle is a climactic struggle against a creature of immense power and horrifying resilience. The Mother, a grotesque and formidable foe, unleashes her full might, attempting to crush the Warden Commander and their companions. However, through sheer determination, strategic brilliance, and the unwavering courage of their allies, the Warden Commander ultimately defeats the Mother. This victory is a monumental achievement, preventing a new, more terrifying blight from engulfing Thedas. The threat of a self-sustaining Darkspawn empire, independent of the old gods, is averted, and the immediate future of the continent is secured, at least for now. The defeat of the Mother is a testament to the Grey Warden's enduring purpose and their ability to rise to even the most impossible challenges. In the aftermath of the Mother's defeat, the Warden Commander solidifies the Grey Warden's presence in Amaranthine. Vigil's Keep, once a dilapidated fortress, is transformed into a bastion of hope and a symbol of the Grey Warden's renewed strength in Ferelden. The Warden Commander, having proven their leadership and strategic prowess, oversees the recruitment and training of new Grey Wardens, rebuilding the order from the ashes of the Fifth Blight. They establish strong alliances with the local nobility and the various factions of Ferelden, ensuring the Grey Wardens are no longer seen as an isolated, mysterious order, but as an integral part of the kingdom's defense. This period marks a critical turning point for the Grey Wardens in Ferelden, securing their future and ensuring they are prepared to face whatever new threats may emerge in the years to come. The legacy of the Warden Commander's actions in Amaranthine will resonate for generations, a testament to their unwavering commitment to protecting Thedas from the encroaching darkness. Continuing our journey through Thedas, we transition from the immediate aftermath of the Fifth Blight, specifically the events of Dragon Age, Origins, Awakening, into a new, pivotal chapter for the continent, one that begins in the year 930 Dragon. This period, known as the Dragon Age itself, marks the beginning of the events chronicled in Dragon Age 2, a story that spans 7 tumultuous years and centers on a single, remarkable individual, Hawke. The tale of Hawke, a refugee from the devastated Ferelden village of Lothering, begins in desperation. As the Blight, a cataclysmic invasion of monstrous darkspawn led by an archdemon, consumed their homeland, Hawke and their surviving family, comprising their mother Leandra and siblings Carver and Bethany, were forced to flee. Their perilous journey led them north, across the perilous Waking Sea, to the Free Marches, a loose confederation of city-states. Their destination, Kirkwall, a bustling port city known for its towering ancient elven ruins and a rather oppressive Chantry presence. The escape itself was fraught with danger, a desperate dash for survival against the encroaching darkness. They were aided, unexpectedly, by the Grey Wardens, the legendary order dedicated to fighting the Blight, who provided safe passage. However, the cost of this escape was high. Hawke's father, Malcolm Hawke, a reclusive apostate mage, had passed away years prior, but the family still carried the burden of his magical heritage, a fact that would profoundly shape their future in Kirkwall. Upon their arrival in Kirkwall, the Hawke family found themselves in a city that, while spared the direct ravages of the Blight, was nonetheless reeling from its economic and social fallout. Refugees flooded its gates, and opportunities were scarce. The city's strict laws regarding magic, enforced by the zealous Templar Order, meant that Bethany, a natural mage like her father, faced an immediate and stark choice. Either join the Circle of Magi, where mages were monitored and trained, often against their will, or be declared an apostate, a rogue mage, and hunted down. Similarly, Carver, a warrior who resented his siblings' magical abilities and often felt overshadowed by Hawke, would find himself compelled to join the Kirkwall City Guard, a path offering stability, if not always justice, in the chaotic city. These choices, forced upon them by circumstance and the rigid social structures of Kirkwall, underscored the precarious position of the Hawke family as they sought to rebuild their lives. Their only initial refuge came in the form of Hawke's eccentric uncle, Gamlen Amell. Gamlen, a ne'er-do-well with a penchant for gambling and a chronic inability to hold onto wealth, offered them a dilapidated, crumbling family estate located in Kirkwall's sprawling Lowtown district. This once proud ancestral home, now a shadow of its former glory, served as a stark reminder of the family's fallen fortunes. It was a humble beginning, far from the comfortable life they had known in Lothering, but it was a roof over their heads, a base from which to navigate the complexities of Kirkwall. Gamlen, despite his flaws, provided a crucial link to their past and a tenuous foothold in their new home, though his schemes and debts often added more stress than solace to the struggling family. Determined to restore their family's standing and escape the squalor of Lowtown, Hawke, driven by a fierce sense of responsibility, embarked on a series of increasingly dangerous expeditions. Their initial ventures were into the treacherous Sundermount, a mountainous region outside Kirkwall, where they sought to clear out darkspawn remnants and other creatures for meager coin. It was during these early struggles that Hawke began to forge alliances that would define their journey. Among their earliest and most enduring companions were Varric Tethras, a charismatic and cunning dwarven merchant and storyteller, and Anders, a renegade apostate mage and Grey Warden, haunted by the spirit of justice. Varric, with his encyclopedic knowledge of the deep roads, the vast underground network of dwarven tunnels, and his connections within Kirkwall's criminal underworld, became an invaluable partner. Anders, driven by a fervent desire for mage freedom, offered powerful magical support, though his increasingly radical views would later become a source of profound conflict. The ultimate goal of these expeditions, however, was to secure their family's fortune, a quest that inevitably led them to the deep roads. These ancient tunnels, once the heart of the Dwarven Empire, were now largely overrun by darkspawn and other horrors. The lure of forgotten treasures and untouched lyrium veins, a powerful magical substance, proved irresistible. It was a high-stakes gamble, fraught with peril, but the promise of wealth and influence was too great to ignore. The deep roads were not merely a source of riches, they were a crucible, testing Hawke's resolve and forging their reputation. The journey into the depths of the earth was a descent into both literal and metaphorical darkness, a place where their family's fate, and indeed the fate of Kirkwall, would be irrevocably altered. The Deep Roads expedition, while ultimately successful in its primary objective, came at a terrible cost, a stark reminder of the brutal realities of Thedas. The Blight, though seemingly contained, still lingered in the deepest parts of the world. During their perilous journey through the ancient dwarven tunnels, the Hawke family encountered a particularly virulent strain of the Darkspawn taint. For Bethany Hawke, the mage sibling who had not joined the Circle of Magi and thus lacked the protective rituals of the Grey Wardens, exposure to this taint proved fatal. Her magical abilities, while formidable, offered no defense against the insidious corruption. In a heartbreaking twist of fate, had she been conscripted into the Circle, her life might have been spared, as the Circle's training and occasional contact with Grey Wardens offered some immunity, or at least a path to becoming a Warden herself. Similarly, for Carver, the warrior sibling who had not joined the Kirkwall City Guard, the Deep Roads proved to be his undoing. Without the discipline and training of the Guard or the protection of the Grey Wardens, he too succumbed to the Blight, a tragic end for a young man who had always strived to prove himself. The loss of a sibling, a direct consequence of their choices and the dangers they faced, left an indelible mark on Hawke, a personal tragedy that fueled their ambition and hardened their resolve. This sacrifice underscored the brutal realities of their world, where even the greatest triumphs were often paid for in blood. Despite the profound personal loss, the Deep Roads expedition ultimately delivered on its promise of immense wealth. Deep within the ancient dwarven ruins, Hawke and their companions discovered the primeval Thaig, a long-lost dwarven city untouched by the ravages of time and darkspawn. Within its forgotten halls, they unearthed an ancient, powerful idol, imbued with immense magical properties. This artifact, along with the vast quantities of lyrium and other treasures found within the Thaig, provided Hawke with a fortune beyond their wildest dreams. This sudden influx of wealth transformed Hawke's standing in Kirkwall overnight. No longer a struggling refugee in Lowtown, Hawke could now command influence and respect, a testament to their daring and tenacity. The discovery of the primeval Thaig and its treasures marked a turning point, elevating Hawke from obscurity to prominence, setting the stage for their ascent within Kirkwall's complex social hierarchy. With their newfound wealth, Hawke swiftly moved to solidify their position. The dilapidated estate in Lowtown was abandoned, and Hawke purchased a magnificent mansion in Kirkwall's exclusive Hightown district. This move was more than just a change of address. It was a clear declaration of their elevated status. Hightown, with its opulent residences and influential residents, was the domain of Kirkwall's elite. By establishing themselves there, Hawke signaled their arrival as a significant player in the city's political and economic landscape. The mansion became a symbol of their success, a testament to their journey from refugee to respected and often feared figure. From this new vantage point, Hawke could now observe and influence the machinations of Kirkwall's powerful families and institutions, their voice now carrying weight in a city that had once dismissed them. Hawke's rise in status inevitably drew them into the intricate web of Kirkwall's political and criminal underworld. The city, a melting pot of cultures and ambitions, was rife with backroom deals, power struggles, and illicit activities. Hawke, no longer able to remain a neutral observer, found themselves increasingly entangled in these affairs. They forged alliances with various factions, from the pragmatic smugglers of the docks to the influential merchants of Hightown, and even the often corrupt members of the Kirkwall City Guard. Conversely, their actions also earned them powerful enemies, particularly among those who saw their rapid ascent as a threat to their own established power. Hawke's reputation, built on daring expeditions and shrewd dealings, grew with each encounter, making them a central figure in the city's ongoing drama. They became a magnet for both opportunity and danger, their name whispered in both awe and fear throughout Kirkwall. Among the many individuals Hawke encountered and assisted during these formative years was Merrill, a young and earnest Dalish elf mage. Merrill, driven by a desire to restore the lost glory of her people, sought to repair an ancient elven mirror known as the Rulin Home. This mirror, however, was not merely a decorative artifact. It was a powerful, dangerous relic, imbued with ancient magic and potentially corrupted by demonic influences. Despite dire warnings from Marathari, the wise and cautious Dalish clankeeper who feared the mirror's true nature and the risks it posed, Merrill remained steadfast in her conviction. Hawke, drawn into Merrill's quest, found themselves aiding her in her efforts, often clashing with Marathari and other members of the Dalish clan who viewed Merrill's ambition with suspicion and fear. The pursuit of the Arulin home tested Hawke's judgment, forcing them to weigh the potential for ancient knowledge against the very real dangers of unchecked magical power, a recurring theme in the history of Thedas. Another significant ally and a source of considerable conflict was Isabella, a roguish pirate captain with a penchant for trouble. Isabella, a free spirit and master of evasion, had inadvertently lost a highly valuable and sacred Kunari relic, the Tome of Kozlin. This tome, a foundational text of the Kun, the strict philosophical and social code of the Kunari people, was of immense importance to them. Its loss was an unforgivable offense, and the Kunari, a formidable and uncompromising race, were determined to reclaim it. Hawke, becoming embroiled in Isabella's predicament, found themselves caught in the escalating tensions between Kirkwall and the increasingly aggressive Kunari presence in the city. Their efforts to help Isabella recover the tome led to direct confrontations with the Kunari Arishok, their formidable leader, and his forces, setting the stage for a much larger conflict that would later engulf Kirkwall. The recovery of the tome, or its ultimate fate, became a crucial element in the delicate balance of power within the city. Hawke also formed a complex and often strained relationship with Fenris, a stoic and tormented elven warrior. Fenris, a former slave of the Tevinter Imperium, bore the physical and emotional scars of his past. His skin etched with lyrium tattoos that granted him immense power, but also caused him constant pain and robbed him of his memories. His primary goal was to confront his former master, Denarius, a powerful and cruel Tevinter magister who had enslaved him and subjected him to horrific experiments. Hawke, recognizing Fenris's deep-seated pain and his desire for justice, aided him in his relentless pursuit of Denarius. This quest took them through the dark underbelly of Kirkwall's criminal networks and into direct conflict with Tevinter agents. Helping Fenris confront his past was not merely a matter of friendship. It was an act of defiance against the brutal institution of slavery and a testament to Hawke's growing moral compass, even amidst the moral ambiguities of Kirkwall. Beyond their personal entanglements, Hawke also played a crucial role in shaping the institutional structures of Kirkwall. One such instance involved Aveline Valen, a steadfast and honorable former Ferelden soldier who had also fled the Blight. Aveline, initially a low-ranking member of the Kirkwall City Guard, quickly proved her dedication and unwavering commitment to justice. Hawke, recognizing her integrity and leadership potential, actively supported her career progression within the Guard. Through their influence and direct intervention in various city affairs, Hawke helped Aveline navigate the political landscape and overcome the entrenched corruption within the ranks. Their efforts culminated in Aveline's promotion to captain of the Kirkwall City Guard, a position she would hold with distinction, bringing a much-needed sense of order and fairness to the often chaotic city. Aveline's rise was a testament to Hawke's ability to identify and empower capable individuals, further solidifying their influence within Kirkwall. As Hawke's reputation grew, so too did their involvement in the darker aspects of Kirkwall's underbelly. The city, already a hotbed of intrigue, became plagued by a series of gruesome murders, seemingly ritualistic in nature. This reign of terror earned the perpetrator the chilling moniker of the Bone Pit Killer, due to the discovery of bodies near the city's notorious Bone Pit Quarry. Hawke, utilizing their network of contacts and their growing investigative skills, delved into the disturbing case. Their investigation slowly uncovered a sinister conspiracy, revealing that the murders were not random acts of violence, but rather carefully orchestrated rituals involving blood magic, a forbidden and dangerous form of magic that draws power from living sacrifices. This discovery brought Hawke into direct conflict with powerful and secretive individuals who sought to exploit Kirkwall's fear and instability for their own dark purposes. Unmasking the Bone Pit Killer and dismantling their network of blood mages was a dangerous undertaking, pushing Hawke to the very limits of their abilities and forcing them to confront the true depths of evil lurking within the city. This confrontation further cemented Hawke's role as a protector of Kirkwall, even as the city continued its descent into turmoil. Hawke, now a burgeoning figure in Kirkwall, found themselves increasingly entangled in the Qunari's growing presence and the demands they placed upon the city. The Qunari, adherents to a strict, all-encompassing philosophy known as the Qun, had been shipwrecked in Kirkwall years prior, and, under the leadership of their formidable Arishok, had established a fortified compound in the city's docks. Their initial goal was simple: recover a sacred artifact, the Tome of Koslin, a foundational text of the Qun, which had been stolen from them. However, the corrupt and inefficient bureaucracy of Kirkwall, particularly the Viscount Dumat and his court, proved utterly incapable of facilitating its return. This bureaucratic inertia and the city's rampant moral decay, which the Qunari viewed as a direct affront to their principles of order and discipline, began to chip away at the Arishok's already thin patience. The Arishok, a towering and unyielding warrior, grew progressively more frustrated with Kirkwall's pervasive corruption and the seemingly endless delays in recovering the tome. He saw the city as a den of vipers, its inhabitants indulging in vice and self-interest, completely at odds with the Qun's tenets of duty and self-sacrifice. His pronouncements became sharper, his demands more insistent, and the tension between the Qunari and the Kirkwall authorities escalated with each passing day. The presence of the Qunari, with their distinctive horns and imposing demeanor, became a constant, unsettling reminder of the simmering conflict. They were an alien force, a disciplined army trapped within a city they despised, and their patience was wearing thin. The situation reached a critical breaking point when Isabella, a notorious pirate and Hawke's sometimes companion, fled Kirkwall with the very artifact the Qunari so desperately sought, the Tome of Koslin. Isabella, a free spirit with a penchant for mischief and a healthy disregard for authority, had initially come into possession of the tome through a series of convoluted events involving her former crew. Unaware of its true significance to the Qunari, or perhaps simply not caring, she saw it as a valuable, if somewhat curious, piece of loot. Her sudden departure with the sacred text in tow was the final straw for the Arishok. His fury, previously contained by a thin veneer of diplomatic protocol, erupted. The theft of the tome, coupled with the years of perceived insults and broken promises, pushed him past the point of no return. He saw Isabella's actions not merely as a criminal act, but as a direct challenge to the Qun and an ultimate disrespect from the people of Kirkwall. Incensed by Isabella's betrayal and Kirkwall's perceived complicity, the Arishok declared war on the city. This was not a mere skirmish, but a full-scale invasion. The Qunari, a highly trained and disciplined fighting force, launched a devastating assault on Hightown, Kirkwall's wealthiest and most prestigious district. This was a symbolic act, a direct strike at the heart of the city's elite, whom the Arishok held responsible for the corruption and chaos. The streets of Hightown, usually bustling with merchants and nobles, became a battlefield, echoing with the clash of steel and the cries of the wounded. Buildings burned, and the once proud district was plunged into chaos. The Arishok, leading from the front, sought to impose the order of the Qun upon a city he deemed rotten to its core. His goal was not simply to retrieve the tome, but to cleanse Kirkwall of its moral decay, by force if necessary. The invasion was swift and brutal, catching the unprepared Kirkwall guard completely off guard. Panic spread throughout the city as the Qunari systematically overwhelmed resistance, their disciplined ranks a stark contrast to the disorganized and demoralized city watch. The Arishok's intent was clear, to bring Kirkwall to its knees and reshape it according to the Qun. In this moment of profound crisis, with Kirkwall teetering on the brink of complete annihilation, Hawke rose to the occasion. Confronting the Arishok in a climactic showdown, Hawke faced a formidable opponent, a warrior of immense skill and unwavering conviction. The battle was fierce, a testament to the Arishok's prowess and Hawke's growing strength. Depending on the choices made throughout their journey, Hawke either faced the Arishok in a grueling single combat, a duel of champions that would decide the fate of Kirkwall, or, with the loyal support of their companions, engage the Qunari leader in a more strategic, group effort. Regardless of the exact circumstances, Hawke emerged victorious. The defeat of the Arishok, a figure who had embodied the Qunari's unwavering resolve and their righteous fury, effectively ended the invasion. With their leader fallen, the remaining Qunari, deprived of their guiding force, were either driven back or surrendered, and Kirkwall was saved from complete destruction. The cost was immense, with Hightown in ruins and countless lives lost, but the city had endured. For their pivotal role in defeating the Qunari and saving Kirkwall from utter devastation, Hawke was officially declared the Champion of Kirkwall. This title, bestowed upon them by the relieved, if still somewhat shaken, city authorities, solidified Hawke's place as a hero and a figure of immense influence. It was a remarkable journey for someone who had arrived in Kirkwall as a penniless refugee, fleeing the blight in Ferelden. Over the course of several years, Hawke had navigated the treacherous political landscape of the city, built a network of allies, and ultimately, through a combination of circumstance, courage, and a healthy dose of luck, ascended from obscurity to become the most celebrated figure in Kirkwall. This transformation underscored the tumultuous nature of the Dragon Age, where individuals could rise from the ashes of disaster to shape the destinies of entire cities. Their story became a legend, whispered in taverns and sung by bards, a testament to the power of a single individual to change the course of history. However, even as Kirkwall began the arduous process of rebuilding and healing, a new, more insidious conflict began to brew beneath the surface, one that had been simmering for centuries across Thedas: the deep-seated animosity between the mages and the Templars. In Kirkwall, these tensions escalated dramatically in the wake of the Qunari invasion. The Chantry, the dominant religious organization in Thedas, maintained control over mages through the Circle of Magi, institutions designed to train and monitor those with magical abilities. The Templar Order, the Chantry's military arm, was tasked with enforcing the rules of the Circle, ensuring mages did not succumb to the temptations of blood magic or demonic possession, and protecting the innocent from uncontrolled magical outbursts. In Kirkwall, the relationship between the first enchanter Orsino, the leader of the Kirkwall Circle of Magi, and Knight Commander Meredith Stannard, the formidable leader of the Kirkwall Templars, was particularly fraught. Orsino, while generally advocating for the mage's freedom, was often seen as overly cautious and unwilling to challenge Meredith's authority directly. Meredith, on the other hand, was a staunch traditionalist, deeply suspicious of mages, and increasingly convinced of their inherent danger. Her experiences, particularly the traumatic loss of her sister to blood magic, fueled her paranoia and conviction that all mages were potential threats. Grand Cleric Elthina, the highest Chantry authority in Kirkwall, attempted to mediate between these two powerful figures. She was a woman of peace and compassion, genuinely committed to maintaining harmony within the city. Her efforts, however, were largely futile. The chasm between Orsino and Meredith was too wide, their ideologies too fundamentally opposed, and the underlying mistrust too deeply ingrained. Elthina's pleas for understanding and compromise fell on deaf ears as both sides entrenched themselves further in their positions. As the years progressed, Knight Commander Meredith Stannard amassed increasing power and influence within Kirkwall. Her unwavering conviction, coupled with the fear and uncertainty that gripped the city after the Qunari invasion, allowed her to gradually tighten her grip on the Kirkwall Circle. She implemented increasingly draconian measures, expanding Templar surveillance, restricting mage freedoms, and subjecting them to harsh interrogations and even brutal punishments for perceived transgressions. Her rule became progressively more tyrannical, transforming the Circle from a place of learning and protection into what many mages viewed as a prison. Meredith's actions were driven by a genuine, albeit misguided belief that she was protecting Kirkwall from the inherent dangers of magic. She saw herself as a bulwark against chaos, and her methods, however extreme, were justified in her own mind by the potential for catastrophic magical incidents. The mages, feeling increasingly oppressed and dehumanized, grew more desperate, their cries for freedom falling on deaf ears. The escalating tensions reached their horrific climax due to the actions of Anders, a former Grey Warden and a powerful mage. Anders was possessed by a spirit of justice, a benevolent entity that had merged with him during his time as a warden. However, over time, the spirit of justice became corrupted by Anders' own bitterness, anger, and desire for vengeance against the Templars and the Chantry's oppressive system. This corrupted entity transformed into a spirit of vengeance, its benevolent intentions twisted into a burning desire for retribution. Driven by this vengeful spirit and his own deep-seated resentment, Anders meticulously orchestrated the destruction of the Kirkwall Chantry. He meticulously planned the attack, using his knowledge of magic and his intimate understanding of the Templars' weaknesses to achieve his devastating goal. The explosion was catastrophic, tearing through the heart of the Chantry and, tragically, killing Grand Cleric Elthina, the very woman who had tirelessly strived for peace. The destruction of the Chantry and the death of Grand Cleric Elthina were the final, irreversible sparks that ignited the powder keg. The fragile peace that Elthina had desperately tried to maintain shattered completely. The Kirkwall Rebellion erupted, plunging the city into open warfare. Mages, pushed to their breaking point by Meredith's tyranny and emboldened by Anders' desperate act, rose up against the Templars. The streets of Kirkwall, still scarred from the Qunari invasion, once again became a battleground. But this time, the conflict was internal, a brutal civil war between two factions that had once been intertwined. The rebellion was not confined to Kirkwall. The news of the Chantry's destruction and the ensuing conflict quickly spread across Thedas, sending shockwaves through every circle of Magi and Templar order. It was a pivotal moment, a catalyst that would ultimately lead to a continent-wide conflict between mages and Templars, forever altering the political and social landscape of the Dragon Age. Hawke, the newly crowned champion of Kirkwall, found themselves caught in the eye of this devastating storm, forced to make an impossible choice between two deeply flawed, yet equally desperate sides. The legacy of their championship would be defined not by their victory over the Qunari, but by their actions in this final, cataclysmic conflict, a conflict that would tear Kirkwall and indeed Thedas apart. As the tumultuous events of Dragon Age 2 drew to a close, with Kirkwall plunged into chaos and the Mage-Templar War igniting across Thedas, the Divine, the spiritual leader of the Chantry, desperately sought a resolution. This brings us to the year 941 Dragon, a period that would irrevocably alter the course of history and introduce a new, formidable power to the world. In a desperate bid to mediate peace between the warring mages and Templars, Divine Justinia V convened a grand conclave at the Temple of Sacred Ashes, a revered Chantry site nestled high in the Frostback Mountains. This ancient temple, a place of pilgrimage and spiritual significance, was chosen as neutral ground, a sanctuary where all parties might set aside their grievances and negotiate an end to the devastating conflict. Representatives from every major faction, including the Circle of Magi, the Templar Order, and even the staunchly independent Free Marches, gathered under the Divine's watchful eye, hoping to forge a lasting accord. However, these hopes were shattered in an instant. A cataclysmic explosion far beyond any known magical or mundane force ripped through the Temple of Sacred Ashes, utterly obliterating the conclave and claiming the lives of nearly everyone present. The sheer scale of the devastation was unprecedented, leaving a gaping crater where the temple once stood. From the very heart of this destruction, a terrifying phenomenon emerged. The Breach, a massive, swirling tear in the fabric of reality, a direct gateway into the Fade itself. The Fade, for those unfamiliar, is the ethereal realm of dreams and spirits, a dimension parallel to Thedas where magic originates. Under normal circumstances, only mages can enter the Fade through meditation or dreams, and even then, only briefly and with great discipline. The Breach, however, was a raw, uncontrolled rupture, spewing forth demons, creatures of the Fade, into the physical world in unprecedented numbers. These demons, manifestations of emotions and concepts, immediately began to wreak havoc, preying on the survivors and further destabilizing an already fractured world. Among the countless casualties of this horrific event was Divine Justinia V herself. Her death, a profound loss for the Chantry and all of Thedas, left a power vacuum at the very pinnacle of religious authority, further exacerbating the existing chaos. The Conclave, meant to be a beacon of hope, instead became the epicenter of a new, even greater crisis. Yet, amidst the ashes and the encroaching demonic horde, a single figure emerged from the wreckage, miraculously alive. This individual, later to be known as the Herald of Andraste and eventually the Inquisitor, bore a mysterious glowing mark on their hand, a strange green sigil pulsating with raw Fade energy. This mark, seemingly connected to the Breach itself, was both a curse and a key. Its presence immediately drew suspicion, especially from those seeking to understand the cause of the explosion. One such individual was Cassandra Pentagast, a seeker of truth and a prominent figure within the Chantry. You may remember Cassandra from Dragon Age 2, where she interrogated Varric Tethras about the champion of Kirkwall. Now, in the aftermath of the Conclave, her focus had shifted. Driven by a fierce sense of duty and a deep-seated desire for justice, Cassandra, a warrior of unwavering faith and formidable skill, immediately took the Herald into custody. Believing them to be the sole survivor of the blast and possessing this inexplicable mark, she logically, albeit mistakenly, suspected the Herald of being responsible for the Conclave's destruction and the opening of the Breach. Her interrogation was intense, fueled by the desperate need for answers in a world teetering on the brink. Also present at the Conclave's aftermath, though in different capacities, were two other familiar faces, Leliana and Cullen Rutherford. Leliana, a former bard and spymaster who had served alongside the hero of Ferelden, was now the left hand of the Divine, a position of immense influence and responsibility within the Chantry's intelligence network. Her sharp mind and extensive contacts made her invaluable in the unfolding crisis. Cullen Rutherford, a former Templar commander who had served in both Ferelden and Kirkwall, was now a senior officer within the Templar Order, grappling with the moral complexities and the devastating consequences of the Mage-Templar War. Both Leliana and Cullen, seasoned veterans of past conflicts, recognized the unprecedented danger posed by the Breach and the demonic incursions, and their experience would prove crucial in the difficult days ahead. As the Herald was being transported, a smaller Fade rift, a localized tear in reality, manifested near the village of Haven, a small settlement located not far from the devastated Conclave site. This rift, though not as massive as the Breach, was still a dangerous conduit for demons, threatening the lives of the villagers and proving the immediate, widespread danger of the Fade's intrusion. It was here, in a moment of desperate urgency, that the true nature of the Herald's mark began to reveal itself. As demons poured forth from the rift, the Herald, guided by an instinctive understanding of the strange energy emanating from their hand, discovered that the mark possessed the unique ability to interact with and, crucially, to close these Fade rifts. With a surge of green energy, the Herald successfully sealed the rift near Haven, temporarily stemming the demonic tide. This act, witnessed by Cassandra and other key figures, served as undeniable proof that the Herald was not merely a survivor, but a vital, perhaps even divine instrument in the fight against the encroaching darkness. The successful closing of the Haven Rift, coupled with the sheer scale of the crisis and the inability of existing powers to cope, led to a pivotal decision. Recognizing the Herald's unique ability and the urgent need for a new force to combat the breach and restore order, the Inquisition was formally established. This new organization, initially conceived as a temporary measure to address the immediate threat, quickly grew into a powerful entity with a singular purpose: to close the breach, seal the numerous smaller rifts appearing across Thedas, and ultimately, to bring stability back to a world on the verge of collapse. The Inquisition, drawing upon the resources and expertise of its disparate members, aimed to be a neutral, independent power, capable of uniting the various factions against a common enemy. Initially operating from the makeshift camp at Haven, the burgeoning Inquisition soon required a more substantial and defensible base of operations. Through a combination of strategic reconnaissance and ancient knowledge, a forgotten fortress, Skyhold, nestled high in the mountains of the western approach, was rediscovered and reclaimed. This ancient seat of power, once a stronghold of the Tevinter Imperium and later a forgotten ruin, was meticulously restored and fortified, becoming the primary base of operations for the Inquisition. Skyhold, with its imposing walls, strategic location, and ample space for training and logistics, symbolized the growing power and ambition of the Inquisition, serving as a beacon of hope in a world shrouded in despair. As the Inquisition solidified its presence, the Inquisitor, as the Herald was now known, began to gather allies, recognizing that the monumental task ahead required a diverse array of skills and perspectives. Among the first to join was Solus, an enigmatic elven apostate mage with an unparalleled knowledge of the Fade. Solus, with his calm demeanor and profound understanding of spirits and magic, quickly became an invaluable advisor, his insights into the nature of the breach and the Fade proving instrumental. Varric Tethras, the charismatic dwarven rogue and storyteller you know from Dragon Age 2, also pledged his support. His connections, sharp wit, and unwavering loyalty, though sometimes couched in cynical humor, provided a much-needed grounding presence amidst the grand pronouncements of the Chantry and the complexities of political maneuvering. Sarah, a mischievous elven archer with a deep distrust of authority and a penchant for practical jokes, brought a unique, street-level perspective to the Inquisition. Her dedication to helping the common folk a refreshing contrast to the often lofty ideals of her companions. The Inquisitor's recruitment efforts extended beyond these initial companions. Blackwall, a stoic and honorable Grey Warden, a member of the Ancient Order dedicated to fighting the Blight, joined the Inquisition, bringing with him his combat prowess and an unwavering commitment to protecting the innocent. His presence was particularly significant given the Grey Warden's reputation as selfless defenders of Thedas. Vivian, a powerful and politically astute first enchanter of the Orlesian Circle of Magi, also lent her considerable talents to the cause. Her sharp intellect, mastery of magic, and understanding of courtly intrigue made her a formidable asset, offering a crucial bridge to the often skeptical mages. With the Inquisition growing in strength and influence, a critical strategic decision loomed. The Mage-Templar War continued to rage, diverting vital resources and attention from the greater threat of the breach. To effectively combat the demonic incursions and bring stability to Thedas, the Inquisition needed the full support of one of these powerful factions. The Inquisitor was thus faced with a profound choice: to ally with the Templars, the disciplined and well-trained warriors of the Chantry, or to side with the Mages, the powerful magic wielders who had long been oppressed by the Templars. Each choice carried significant consequences, shaping the future trajectory of the Inquisition and the fate of Thedas. Allying with the Templars would bring order and military might, but at the risk of alienating mages and potentially perpetuating their oppression. Siding with the mages would offer powerful magical support and a chance for freedom, but might alienate the Chantry and risk further instability if mages were left unchecked. This decision, fraught with moral and strategic complexities, was one of the first major tests of the Inquisitor's leadership, setting the stage for the many difficult choices yet to come in the ongoing struggle against the encroaching darkness. As the year 941 Dragon continued, the fledgling Inquisition, still reeling from the initial revelation of Corypheus's involvement, began to piece together the true scope of his ambition. Their investigations led them to discover that Corypheus, a powerful ancient magister sidereal, one of the original Tevinter magisters who first breached the Golden City, was not merely a rogue mage. He was the architect of the breach itself, his dark magic tearing a hole in the veil between the Fade and the waking world. The Inquisition's agents, spearheaded by agents like Josephine Montilier, their ambassador, and Leliana, their spymaster, uncovered disturbing reports and ancient texts hinting at Corypheus's ultimate goal: to seize an incredibly powerful elven artifact known as the Orb of Destruction. This relic, imbued with ancient magic, held the potential to amplify Corypheus's already formidable power to unimaginable levels, allowing him to not only control the breach, but to reshape Thedas to his will. The very thought of such power in the hands of a corrupted magister sent shivers down the spines of even the most hardened inquisitors. The hunt for Corypheus and the Orb led the Inquisition across the vast and varied landscapes of Thedas. Their journey took them first to the western approach, a desolate, sun-baked region riddled with ancient dwarven ruins. Here, amidst the crumbling stone and forgotten history, they encountered strange, ethereal beings and a lingering sense of despair, remnants of a forgotten conflict. The Inquisition scouts, often led by the resourceful Varric Tethras, uncovered evidence of Corypheus's agents operating within these ruins, searching for clues to the orb's location. From the western approach, their pursuit continued into the treacherous hissing wastes, a sprawling desert landscape dominated by towering rock formations and hidden canyons. This unforgiving environment, teeming with dangerous creatures and ancient secrets, concealed not only more dwarven ruins but also long-lost elven temples, their intricate carvings hinting at the orb's true origins and its devastating potential. The Inquisitor, often accompanied by companions like the Wise Solus, an elven apostate with a deep understanding of the Fade and elven lore, or the pragmatic Cassandra Pentagast, a seeker of truth, delved into these forgotten places, deciphering ancient scripts and battling Corypheus's forces, who were equally desperate to locate the artifact. Each discovery, each battle, painted a clearer picture of Corypheus's meticulous plan and the sheer audacity of his ambition. The weight of Thetis's fate pressed heavily upon the Inquisitor's shoulders. During these perilous expeditions, a far more insidious threat emerged, one that struck at the very heart of the Inquisition's allies, the Grey Wardens. Reports began to surface of Grey Wardens across Thetis exhibiting strange, erratic behavior, hearing voices, and acting with uncharacteristic aggression. The Inquisition's investigations, often spearheaded by advisors like Cullen Rutherford, the former Templar commander, revealed a horrifying truth. Corypheus, through his dark influence, had twisted the Grey Warden's sacred calling. He had manipulated them into performing a ritual, a blight calling, that would summon an unprecedented number of darkspawn and, more terrifyingly, an archdemon, a corrupted old god long thought to be extinct. This ritual, if successful, would unleash a Fifth Blight, an apocalyptic event that would devastate Thetis and serve as a distraction for Corypheus's true objective. The Inquisitor was faced with an impossible choice, either to condemn and exile the entire Grey Warden Order, severing a vital defense against the Darkspawn, or to find a way to redeem them, to cleanse them of Corypheus's corruption without sacrificing their invaluable role. This decision, fraught with moral complexities, tested the Inquisitor's leadership and the very principles of the Inquisition. Ultimately, the Inquisitor, after much deliberation and often with the guidance of their companions, either chose to exile the corrupted wardens, a necessary evil to prevent a greater catastrophe, or to find a way to break Corypheus's hold, often with the help of those wardens who resisted his influence, thereby preserving their order, albeit at a great cost. The choice had profound consequences, shaping the future of the Grey Wardens in Thetis. As the pieces of Corypheus's grand design fell into place, the Inquisitor, through a combination of ancient texts, captured agents, and the insights of their companions, learned of Corypheus's ultimate terrifying plan. He didn't just want power, he wanted godhood. Corypheus intended to enter the Fade, the spirit world, through the immense tear he had created in the Veil. And then, using the Orb of Destruction, he would tear down the very fabric of the Fade, remake it in his own image, and ascend to become a true god. This was not merely a conquest of Thetis, but a cosmic ambition, a blasphemous act that threatened to unravel reality itself. The implications were staggering, the stakes higher than ever before. The Inquisition realized they could not merely contain Corypheus, they had to stop him, permanently. With this chilling revelation, the Inquisition mobilized its forces, knowing that time was running out. Their path led them to Adamant Fortress, a formidable ancient stronghold located in the desolate western reaches of Orlais. This strategically important fortress had fallen under Corypheus's control and was being used as a staging ground for his final, desperate ritual. The battle for Adamant was fierce and brutal, a testament to the might of Corypheus's forces, which included not only his corrupted Tevinter mages, but also a legion of demons pouring forth from the breach. The Inquisitor and their companions, alongside the combined might of the Inquisition's army, fought tooth and nail, pushing through waves of enemies, their resolve strengthened by the knowledge of what was at stake. It was within the crumbling walls of Adamant that the Inquisitor and their companions faced a truly terrifying adversary, Corypheus's dragon, a high dragon, corrupted and twisted by his dark magic, a monstrous beast of immense power and destructive capability. This wasn't merely a beast to burden, it was a symbol of Corypheus's dominion, a living weapon unleashed upon the Inquisition. The battle against the High Dragon was a grueling test of skill, strategy, and courage, a climactic confrontation that pushed the Inquisitor and their allies to their limits. Only through coordinated efforts, exploiting the dragon's weaknesses and enduring its fiery breath and crushing blows, were they able to bring the colossal creature down. With the High Dragon defeated and Corypheus's forces scattered, the Inquisitor, using the power of the mark on their hand, was finally able to close the breach, the massive tear in the sky that had plagued Thetis for months. The sky above Adamant Fortress, once a swirling vortex of green energy, slowly began to knit itself back together, the demonic incursion ceasing, and a fragile sense of hope returning to the war-torn land. This act, while not defeating Corypheus himself, temporarily halted his immediate threat, buying Thetis precious time and establishing the Inquisition as a legitimate power, a force capable of protecting the world from threats both mundane and supernatural. The closing of the breach was a moment of triumph, a testament to the Inquisitor's courage and the Inquisition's growing strength. Following the dramatic events at Adamant Fortress and the closing of the breach, the Inquisition's influence skyrocketed. Their heroic actions resonated across Thedas, earning them the respect and gratitude of countless people. They transformed from a fledgling organization into a major political and military power, their decisions now carrying significant weight in the courts of Orlais and Ferelden. Ambassadors from various nations flocked to Skyhold, the Inquisition's newly established headquarters, seeking alliances and offering resources. The Inquisitor, now a celebrated hero, found themselves at the center of political intrigue, navigating complex alliances and rivalries, their every move scrutinized by the powerful and the desperate alike. The Inquisition's resources expanded dramatically, allowing them to dispatch agents and forces to various troubled regions across Thedas, further solidifying their authority. One such region was the Emerald Graves, a lush, verdant forest in Orlais, scarred by an ongoing civil war between the loyalist forces of Empress Celine and the rebel army of Grand Duke Gaspard. As the Inquisition delved into the Emerald Graves, they not only encountered the brutal realities of this conflict but also stumbled upon ancient elven ruins, hidden deep within the forest's embrace. These ruins, often protected by enigmatic guardians and ancient wards, held secrets pertaining to the ancient elves, their magic, and their connection to the Fade, which Solace in particular found fascinating and deeply concerning. The Inquisitor, guided by their companions and the intelligence gathered by their agents, began to uncover layers of ancient history, revealing connections between the elves' past and the current turmoil in Thedas. From the Emerald Graves, the Inquisition's investigations led them to the Exalted Plains, another war-torn region in Orlais, where the civil war raged with even greater ferocity. Here, amidst the battlefields and the suffering, the Inquisition continued to uncover ancient elven secrets, often related to the lost city of Arlathan and the true nature of the elven pantheon, the Evanuris. The Inquisitor, through careful diplomacy and strategic interventions, began to understand the true depths of the Orlesian civil war. They learned that the conflict was not merely a struggle for power between Celine and Gaspard, but was deeply intertwined with ancient grudges, political machinations, and the hidden agendas of powerful figures like Briala, Celine's elven spy master and former lover. The Inquisition was forced to make difficult choices, deciding whether to support Empress Celine, whose reign was marked by a fragile peace but also by political maneuvering, or Grand Duke Gaspard, a formidable warrior who promised stability but whose methods were often brutal. The choice of who to support had far-reaching consequences, influencing the outcome of the war and shaping the future of Orlais, a powerful empire whose stability was crucial to the overall peace of Thedas. The Inquisitor's decisions in these regions were not just about winning battles, but about navigating a complex web of political alliances, ancient history, and moral dilemmas, all while keeping Corypheus's ultimate threat firmly in mind. The Inquisitor's relentless pursuit of Corypheus culminates in a series of critical confrontations designed to dismantle his operations and weaken his grip on Thedas. Depending on the choices made by the Inquisitor earlier in their journey, they will face either Samson, a former Templar turned Red Larium addict, or Calpurnia, a Tevinter slave turned Magister. Samson, empowered by the corrupting influence of Red Larium, serves as a formidable general for Corypheus, commanding a significant portion of his forces. His story is one of tragic descent, a man who once swore to protect, now twisted into a weapon of destruction. The Inquisitor, having learned of the Red Lyrium's addictive nature and its debilitating effects, can choose to either cure Samson, freeing him from Corypheus's control and the Red Lyrium's torment, or defeat him in battle, ending his destructive path. This choice highlights the Inquisition's moral complexities and its ability to offer redemption even to those seemingly lost. Alternatively, if the Inquisitor chose to disrupt Corypheus's network through the Tevinter Imperium, they would confront Calpurnia. She is a powerful magister, a master of arcane arts, and a cunning strategist who believes in Corypheus's vision for restored Tevinter. Calpurnia's backstory reveals a struggle against the oppressive slave system of Tevinter, and her allegiance to Corypheus stems from a desire to see a new order, albeit one built on his twisted ideals. The Inquisitor, through diplomacy and exposing Corypheus's true intentions to Calpurnia, can potentially turn her against her master, revealing his manipulative nature and the deceit inherent in his promises. This path emphasizes the power of information and persuasion over brute force, showcasing the Inquisitor's capacity for strategic thinking beyond direct combat. The outcome of these encounters, whether Samson is cured or defeated, or Calpurnia is swayed or overcome, directly impacts the final confrontation with Corypheus, weakening his forces and limiting his tactical options. With Corypheus's generals dealt with, the stage is set for the ultimate showdown against the ancient Magister Sidireal. This final battle takes place in a location of immense strategic and symbolic importance, often involving the use of powerful artifacts or ancient sites. Corypheus, a survivor of the original Magisters who attempted to enter the Golden City, possesses immense magical power, capable of wielding corrupted Fade energies and controlling dragons. His goal is to return to the Golden City, now the Black City, and reclaim what he believes is his rightful place, to become a god. The Inquisitor, armed with their mark, the anchor, and the full might of the Inquisition, confronts Corypheus in a desperate struggle for the fate of Thedas. This battle is not merely a clash of physical strength and magical prowess, but also a test of wills and ideologies. The Inquisitor, representing hope and unity, stands against Corypheus, who embodies ancient corruption and a thirst for power. The fight is a multi-stage affair, requiring the Inquisitor to utilize all the resources at their disposal, including their companions and their own unique abilities. Corypheus often employs powerful dragons corrupted by his influence, as well as an army of Darkspawn and Venatori mages. The Inquisitor must strategically weaken Corypheus, perhaps by destroying his sources of power or by exploiting weaknesses revealed through previous investigations. The climax of the confrontation sees the Inquisitor using the Anchor, their unique connection to the Fade, to directly confront Corypheus's essence. The Anchor, which has been a source of both power and pain, becomes the key to defeating the Ancient Magister. Through a powerful surge of Fade energy, the Inquisitor manages to sever Corypheus's connection to the world, effectively destroying him. This victory is a monumental achievement, saving Thedas from an existential threat and cementing the Inquisition's place in history. However, the defeat of Corypheus, while a triumph, comes at a significant cost to the Inquisitor. The mark, the glowing green mark on their hand that allowed them to seal Fade rifts and defeat Corypheus, begins to destabilize. This destabilization is not merely a loss of power, but a painful and potentially fatal condition. The mark, having absorbed and channeled immense amounts of Fade energy during the confrontation with Corypheus, now struggles to contain that power. It begins to glow erratically, causing intense pain and threatening to consume the Inquisitor. This immediate consequence of victory highlights the dangerous nature of the Fade and the immense burden the Inquisitor has carried. The mark, once a symbol of their power and purpose, now becomes a ticking time bomb, a constant reminder of the sacrifices made. In the aftermath of Corypheus's defeat and the Inquisitor's worsening condition, the Inquisition holds a final war council. This gathering of the Inquisition's most trusted advisors, including Cullen, Josephine, Leliana, and others, is a somber yet pivotal moment. The immediate threat has been neutralized, but the future of Thedas remains uncertain. The council discusses the profound impact the Inquisition has had on the world, the power it has amassed, and the delicate balance of political power it has disrupted. They deliberate on the various factions and nations now reeling from the events of the past year and the potential for new conflicts to arise. The discussions are wide-ranging, covering everything from the rebuilding efforts in the ravaged lands to the long-term implications of the Fade rifts. The Inquisitor, though weakened, participates in these crucial discussions, offering their insights and guidance. During this war council, the Inquisitor faces a monumental decision: the fate of the Inquisition itself. They can choose to disband the organization, returning its members to their former lives and allowing the established powers of Thedas to resume control, albeit with a new understanding of cooperation. This option emphasizes a return to normalcy, recognizing that the Inquisition was formed to address a specific crisis and that its continued existence might be seen as a threat to the established order. Disbanding would signify a successful completion of their mission and a desire to avoid becoming another powerful, potentially oppressive force in Thedas. Alternatively, the Inquisitor can choose to continue the Inquisition's work, transforming it from a crisis response unit into a permanent institution dedicated to monitoring and addressing emerging threats, fostering peace, and providing aid. This path suggests that the events of the past year have fundamentally changed Thedas, and that a powerful, independent organization like the Inquisition is still necessary to safeguard its future. Continuing the Inquisition would mean establishing a new mandate, perhaps focusing on intelligence gathering, diplomatic intervention, or continued research into the Fade and other magical phenomena. Both choices have profound implications for the political landscape of Thedas, shaping its future for generations to come. As the War Council concludes and the Inquisitor grapples with their decision and their deteriorating health, a shocking revelation shatters the fragile peace. Solus, the enigmatic elven apostate and trusted advisor, reveals his true identity. He is not merely an ancient elven mage, but Herald, the Dreadwolf, one of the most powerful and feared figures in elven mythology, a trickster god. This revelation is delivered in a private, intense confrontation with the Inquisitor, often in a secluded location, emphasizing the personal nature of this betrayal. Solus, who has been a constant presence, offering advice and insights into the Fade and elven lore, now stands before the Inquisitor as an ancient deity. His true form, often depicted with subtle hints of power and ancient magic, is now fully unveiled. In a heartbreaking confession, Solus admits to a series of deceptions that directly led to the events of the Dragon Age. He reveals that he was the one who gave Corypheus the orb, the artifact that Corypheus used to open the breach and unleash chaos upon Thedas. Solus explains that he intended to use the orb himself, a powerful elven artifact known as the Orb of Destruction, to restore the ancient elven empire. However, his weakened state after centuries of slumber prevented him from wielding its full power, forcing him to seek an unwitting pawn. Corypheus, with his ancient knowledge and thirst for power, proved to be the perfect, albeit flawed, instrument. Solus's true plan was to use the orb to tear down the veil, the magical barrier separating the physical world from the Fade, and restore the ancient elven world, even if it meant the destruction of the current world. This confession exposes the depth of his manipulation and the grand scale of his ambition. As the Inquisitor grapples with this monumental betrayal, Solus performs a final, bittersweet act. Recognizing the Inquisitor's imminent demise from the destabilizing mark, he uses his immense power as Fen Herald to remove it. This act, while saving the Inquisitor's life, simultaneously strips them of their unique connection to the Fade and the power that defined their journey. The mark, which has been a source of both immense power and agonizing pain, is gone, leaving the Inquisitor physically weakened but alive. This moment is imbued with a profound sense of loss and sacrifice. The Inquisitor, who bore the burden of the mark and used its power to save Thedas, is now left without it, a stark reminder of the cost of their heroism and the lingering consequences of Solas's actions. With his true identity revealed and his plan set in motion, Solas, now fully embracing his role as the elven god Fen'Harel, betrays the Inquisition and begins his true agenda, to tear down the Veil. He explains that the Veil, created by him in ancient times to imprison the other elven gods, the Evanuris, also severed the elves from their magical heritage and their true potential. He believes that by tearing down the Veil, he can restore the elven people to their former glory, even if it means destroying the current world and all its inhabitants, including humans, dwarves, and Quinari. Solas disappears, leaving the Inquisitor and the Inquisition stunned and reeling from the magnitude of his betrayal. His departure marks the beginning of a new, even more profound threat to Thedas, a threat that transcends mere political or magical conflicts. The stage is now set for future conflicts, where the fate of the entire world hangs in the balance, as the Dreadwolf begins his relentless march towards a cataclysmic future. The Inquisitor, now without their mark but with a renewed sense of purpose, is left to pick up the pieces and prepare for the inevitable confrontation with the ancient elven god. Following the tumultuous events of the Inquisition, as the world grappled with the fallout from Corypheus's defeat and the shocking revelation of Solas's true identity, the timeline progresses into the year 944 Dragon. This period, known as the Dragon Age, sees the various nations of Thedas attempting to stabilize, while beneath the surface, new threats begin to coalesce. A collection of short stories gathered under the title Tevinter Nights offers us a fragmented but vital glimpse into this transitional era, detailing events across the continent and highlighting the shifting political landscape alongside the growing, insidious threat posed by Solas's plans. These tales serve not only to introduce new characters and expand upon existing lore, but also to meticulously lay the groundwork for future conflicts and revelations. One such narrative, the next one, plunges us back into the familiar, often troubled city of Kirkwall, a place scarred by the Mage Templar War. Here, Charter, a former member of the Inquisition's spymaster Liliana's network, now operating independently, investigates a peculiar and deeply unsettling phenomenon, the emergence of a new idol crafted from red lyrium. Red lyrium, you may recall, is a corrupted form of the naturally occurring mineral lyrium, imbued with a blight and possessing a malevolent sentience. Its presence is always a harbinger of disaster, and a new idol, particularly one attracting fervent worship, is cause for immediate concern. Charter's investigation, however, uncovers a truth more complex than simple blight corruption. She discovers the idol is, in fact, a sophisticated fake, an elaborate ruse designed to mislead. The true revelation lies in the identity of those behind this deception, a nascent yet disturbingly zealous cult known as the Disciples of the Stone. These fanatics, unlike the typical followers of the Blight or other dark entities, worship the Titans, the colossal, ancient beings that dwell within the very fabric of the earth, beings long thought to be mere mythological figures by most surface dwellers. The Disciples' emergence signals a profound shift in the spiritual landscape of Thedas, hinting at a resurgence of forgotten powers and a challenge to the established understanding of the world. Their motives are shrouded in mystery, but their actions suggest a desire to awaken or commune with these subterranean giants, potentially unleashing forces beyond mortal comprehension. Charter's encounter with them underscores the fragmented nature of the post-Inquisition world, where old threats fade only for new, often more enigmatic, ones to rise in their place. Meanwhile, far to the north, amidst the desolate plains and towering peaks of the Anderfels, another expedition ventures into the unknown. In The Horror of Hormak, Scout Harding, the ever-reliable dwarven scout from the Inquisition, leads a team deep into the labyrinthine expanse of the Deep Roads. This subterranean network, carved by the dwarves over millennia, is a place of both ancient wonder and unimaginable peril, largely abandoned since the First Blight forced the dwarves to retreat from their sprawling empire. Harding's mission is one of exploration and reconnaissance, pushing further than most surface dwellers dare. Her team, a mix of seasoned dwarven explorers and Inquisition specialists, confronts not only the omnipresent threat of Darkspawn, the corrupted creatures of the Blight that infest the Deep Roads, but also ancient, terrifying creatures unlike anything previously documented. These monstrous entities, long dormant in the forgotten depths, hint at an ecosystem far older and more complex than surface scholars have ever conceived. More significantly, Harding's expedition uncovers evidence of forgotten dwarven thaigs. Thaigs are the ancient dwarven cities, once vibrant centers of culture and industry, now largely ruins swallowed by the earth and the Blight. The discovery of previously unknown Thays, particularly those hinting at a unique architectural style or technological advancement, suggests a hidden history of the dwarves, a civilization perhaps even more expansive and diverse than previously imagined. The implications are profound, suggesting that the dwarves' decline was not as absolute as believed, and that secrets, and perhaps even survivors of their ancient past, might still linger in the darkness. Harding's experiences in Hormak serve as a chilling reminder that the world beneath the surface holds as many mysteries and dangers as the world above, and that the past, however buried, always has a way of resurfacing. Simultaneously, in the verdant mystical depths of the Arbor Wilds, a region steeped in ancient elven lore and home to powerful spirits, a high-stakes negotiation unfolds in An Old God's Bargain. Here, Maverus Talani, a prominent and exceptionally skilled Tevinter Magister, finds herself in a precarious alliance with an ancient dragon. Maverus, a character renowned for her sharp intellect and formidable magical prowess, is not one to engage in casual dealings with such powerful, unpredictable beings. Her presence in the Arbor Wilds and her willingness to parley with a creature of such immense power underscores the gravity of her quest. She seeks knowledge, specifically concerning the Evanuris, the ancient elven pantheon, and the true nature of the Veil itself. The Veil, as you know, is the magical barrier that separates the physical world from the Fade, the spirit realm. Its creation, traditionally attributed to Solus, was a pivotal event in elven history, trapping the Evanuris and fundamentally altering the world. Maverus's pursuit of this knowledge is directly linked to the growing threat of Solus, the Dreadwolf. Her inquiries hint at his ultimate goals, the tearing down of the Veil and the restoration of the ancient elven world, a cataclysmic event that would undoubtedly lead to the destruction of all non-elven life. The dragon, a creature of immense age and arcane wisdom, possesses fragments of this forbidden knowledge, passed down through generations or perhaps witnessed firsthand. Maverus's dangerous bargain highlights the desperate measures being taken by some to understand and potentially counter Solus's apocalyptic agenda. Her actions demonstrate a willingness to plumb the darkest corners of ancient magic and lore, even at great personal risk, to safeguard the future of Thetis. This story not only expands upon the intricate history of the Evanuris and the Veil, but also solidifies Maverus's role as a key player in the unfolding drama against Solus. Finally, in The Dreadwolf Take You, we rejoin Sarah, the irreverent elven assassin and former companion of the Inquisitor. Sarah, ever the champion of the common folk and an ardent opponent of anything that threatens their simple lives, finds herself on a relentless hunt for agents of Solus. Her unique perspective, rooted in the everyday struggles of ordinary people rather than grand political schemes, makes her a particularly effective, if unconventional, adversary to the Dreadwolf's machinations. Solus's agents, often disguised or operating in the shadows, are working to subtly undermine the existing order, sow discord, and gather artifacts or information crucial to his world-altering plans. Sarah, with her keen senses, stealth, and unparalleled skill with a bow, tracks these operatives across various locales, disrupting their efforts and cutting off their supply lines. Her missions are not about grand battles or sweeping declarations, but about the quiet, brutal efficiency of an assassin dedicated to protecting the innocent. Her disdain for elfy elf nonsense extends directly to Solus and his ancient world-shattering ambitions, which she views as a direct threat to the lives of the people she cares about. This story provides a street-level view of Solus's influence, showing how his plans ripple through society, affecting even the most ordinary individuals. Sarah's continued fight against these hidden threats reminds us that resistance to Solus's agenda comes from all corners of Thetis, not just from the powerful and politically connected. Her story underscores the pervasive nature of Solus's influence, extending far beyond the grand stage of politics and into the hidden alleys and forgotten corners of the world, where ordinary people, like Sarah, are forced to take a stand. These intertwined narratives from Tevinter Nights paint a vivid picture of a world teetering on the brink, where ancient powers stir, new cults rise, and the shadow of the Dreadwolf lengthens across the land. As the year 944 Dragon continued to unfold, the whispers of ancient magic and political intrigue grew louder, echoing across Thetis. Sarah, the former companion of the Inquisitor, continued her clandestine investigation into the burgeoning network of Solus, the elven apostate and former companion, now revealed as the Dreadwolf. Her efforts, focused on the shadowy underbelly of elven society, began to peel back layers of deceit and manipulation. Sarah, with her unique blend of street smarts and unyielding skepticism, was particularly adept at identifying the subtle shifts in elven communities, recognizing the signs of Solus's growing influence. She discovered that many elves, disillusioned by centuries of oppression and the shattered promises of both human and elven leadership, were readily embracing Solus's vision of a restored elven empire. His agents, often operating under the guise of benevolent reformers or cultural revivalists, subtly sowed discontent and recruited those who felt most disenfranchised. Sarah's findings painted a grim picture. Solus's network was not a disparate collection of isolated cells, but a sophisticated, interconnected web, spanning from the hidden groves of the Dales to the crowded elfinage districts of major cities. His reach extended even to those who seemed least likely to be swayed, demonstrating a profound understanding of elven psychology and historical grievances. The implications were chilling, suggesting a far more advanced and pervasive operation than anyone outside of Solas's inner circle had imagined. Concurrently, another tale, Eight Little Talons, drew attention to the ever-present threat of the Antivan Crows, a notorious guild of assassins and thieves. A particularly audacious group of crows, renowned for their daring and ruthlessness, embarked on a perilous mission to infiltrate the heavily guarded estate of a powerful Tevinter magister. Their target was an artifact of immense power, rumored to possess capabilities beyond conventional understanding. The crows, masters of their craft, navigated the magister's intricate defenses, employing their signature blend of stealth, subterfuge, and lethal precision. However, as they neared their objective, the true nature of the artifact began to reveal itself. It was not merely a magical trinket or a valuable relic, but something far more ancient and deeply connected to the foundational magic of Thedas. The artifact, described as pulsating with a strange otherworldly energy, bore markings and designs unmistakably elven in origin, harkening back to the era before the Veil was erected. This discovery immediately raised red flags, linking the seemingly isolated heist to the broader machinations of Solas. The artifact's connection to ancient elven magic suggested it was either a tool Solas sought to reclaim, a piece of his lost world, or perhaps a means to further his destructive agenda. The crows, initially focused solely on the acquisition and profit, found themselves unwittingly entangled in a conflict far grander and more perilous than any they had previously encountered. The implications of such an artifact falling into the wrong hands, particularly those aligned with Solas, were dire, foreshadowing potential disruptions to the very fabric of reality. Meanwhile, the story Half-Sovereign introduced a compelling new character, Neve, a former agent of the now disbanded Inquisition. Following the dissolution of the Inquisition, Neve had sought a new life, finding herself in the bustling free marcher city of Starkhaven. Starkhaven, a hub of trade and political maneuvering, provided a stark contrast to the structured, mission-driven life she had known. Neve, still possessing the keen investigative skills honed during her time with the Inquisition, found herself unable to ignore the undercurrents of unrest and corruption that permeated the city. She began to uncover a sinister conspiracy, one deeply rooted in the insidious practice of blood magic. Blood magic, a dark and forbidden art that draws power from living sacrifices, was being wielded by powerful figures within Starkhaven's elite, manipulating events from behind the scenes. This conspiracy was not merely about personal gain, it was intricately linked to the broader political unrest plaguing the Free Marches. The region, already fractured by internal disputes and external pressures, was particularly vulnerable to such manipulations. Neve's investigation revealed that the Blood Mages were exploiting existing tensions between noble houses, exacerbating economic disparities, and even instigating localized conflicts to further their own shadowy agenda. The ultimate goal of this cabal remained shrouded in mystery, but its immediate impact was clear: to destabilize the Free Marches, creating a power vacuum that they intended to fill. Neve, despite her desire for a quieter life, found herself once again thrust into the role of a protector, battling against forces that threatened to plunge an entire region into chaos. Her struggles highlighted the enduring need for vigilance even after the grand conflicts of the Inquisition had seemingly concluded. The year 944 Dragon also saw a deeper exploration of the Qunari's presence and activities in Tevinter, particularly in the short story The Mortification of the Flesh. This narrative delved into the Qunari's unwavering commitment to the Qun, their strict philosophical and social code, and their relentless efforts to convert the people of Tevinter to their way of life. The Qunari, having established a foothold in the northern reaches of the Imperium, were not merely content with military occupation. They sought to fundamentally transform Tevinter society. Their methods, while often presented as benevolent and logical, were undeniably forceful and uncompromising. They established re-education centers known as re-education camps by some, where Tevinters were subjected to rigorous indoctrination into the Qun. This process, often involving the stripping away of personal identities and cultural practices, was a stark demonstration of the Qunari's absolute conviction in their ideology. The story vividly portrayed the clashes of culture and ideology, with the individualistic, magic-centric Tevinters resisting the rigid, collective philosophy of the Qun. The Qunari viewed magic, particularly the widespread practice of blood magic and demon summoning in Tevinter, as a dangerous perversion, something to be eradicated or brought under the strict control of the Qun. This fundamental disagreement fueled an ever-growing tension between the two powers. The story highlighted the escalating skirmishes, the propaganda wars, and the deep-seated mistrust that permeated every interaction. It became clear that the Qunari's presence in Tevinter was not a temporary occupation, but a long-term ideological crusade, setting the stage for a potential large-scale conflict that could engulf all of Thedas. The Qunari's unwavering resolve and Tevinter's fierce pride created a volatile cocktail, a flashpoint for future wars that promised to be brutal and far-reaching. Finally, the short story Callback brought back a familiar and beloved face. Varric Tethras, the quick-witted dwarven storyteller, now serving as the Viscount of Kirkwall. In the aftermath of the harrowing events surrounding the Red Lyrium idol, a corrupted artifact that had caused widespread devastation and madness, Varric found himself burdened by the weight of leadership. The idol, once a source of immense power but also profound corruption, had left an indelible scar on Kirkwall, both physically and psychologically. Varric, with his characteristic pragmatism and dry humor, was grappling with the immense responsibility of rebuilding his city and restoring the faith of its people. The story delved into his internal monologue, revealing the quiet anxieties and profound sense of duty that lay beneath his jovial exterior. He reflected on the ongoing threats that plagued Thedas, the lingering shadows of the Blight, the rise of Solus, the escalating conflict with the Kunari, and the myriad of smaller, localized dangers that constantly emerged. The Red Lyrium idol incident served as a constant reminder of how quickly order could descend into chaos, and how easily even the most well-intentioned actions could have unforeseen and devastating consequences. Varric, once content to observe and narrate, was now forced to act, to make difficult decisions that affected countless lives. He understood that the burden of leadership was not merely about wielding power, but about bearing the responsibility for the well-being of an entire city, and by extension, contributing to the stability of Thedas itself. His reflections underscored the precarious state of the world, a world constantly teetering on the brink of new crises, where heroes and leaders were perpetually called upon to rise to the occasion, even when they yearned for a moment of peace. The short stories of Tevinter Knights collectively painted a vibrant and complex picture of Thedas in 944 Dragon, a world brimming with danger, intrigue, and the ever-present promise of monumental change. And so we arrive at the precipice, the looming shadow that has been cast since the very first whispers of the Dreadwolf. Our journey through Thedas has been long and fraught with peril, but perhaps none so great as the one that awaits us in the upcoming 9th installment of the Dragon Age saga, currently known as Dragon Age: Dreadwolf. This narrative picks up directly after the events chronicled in the Dragon Age, Tevinter Knight's short stories, firmly placing us in the post-944 Dragon era, a time of profound uncertainty and escalating tension across the continent. The world, still reeling from the breach and the machinations of Corypheus, now faces a threat of an entirely different magnitude, one that promises to reshape the very fabric of reality. At the heart of this impending cataclysm is Solus, the enigmatic elven apostate who was for a time a companion to the Inquisitor. His true identity, revealed in the climactic moments of Dragon Age, Inquisition's Trespasser DLC sent shockwaves through the fandom and irrevocably altered our understanding of elven history and the nature of magic itself. Solus is, in fact, Herald, the Dreadwolf, one of the ancient elven gods, or Evanurus, who was imprisoned millennia ago for his role in sealing away the more destructive of his brethren. His plan, as chillingly articulated, involves nothing less than the tearing down of the Veil. For those unfamiliar, the Veil is the magical barrier that separates the physical world of Thedas from the Fade, the realm of spirits and dreams. It was Solus himself, in his ancient past, who created this Veil, an act intended to imprison the other Evanurus and prevent their tyrannical rule from utterly destroying the elven people. Now, however, he views its continued existence as an abomination, a perpetual wound upon the world that has stripped the elves of their immortality, their magic, and their connection to their true heritage. Solus's motivation is deeply rooted in a desire to restore the ancient elven world, a time of unparalleled magic and prosperity before the creation of the Veil. He envisions a return to an era where elves were immortal, powerful, and lived in harmony with the Fade. The tragic irony, of course, is that this restoration would come at an unimaginable cost. The tearing down of the Veil would not merely be a magical disruption, it would be an apocalyptic event. The very laws of physics would unravel, the Fade would merge with the physical world, and the countless spirits and demons contained within would pour forth without restraint. Entire cities, civilizations, and indeed, all non-elven races would likely be annihilated in the ensuing chaos. Solus, with a chilling pragmatism, views these current inhabitants as mere temporary residents, their lives a regrettable but necessary sacrifice for the greater good of his people, the ancient elves. He believes the current world is a pale imitation, a broken reflection of what once was, and that its destruction is a small price to pay for the rebirth of true elven glory. This ideological clash between preserving the current world and restoring a lost golden age forms the central conflict of Dreadwolf. The stage for this epic confrontation is primarily set in the sprawling and politically complex Tevinter Imperium, as well as other northern regions of Thedas. This is a significant departure from previous games, which largely focused on Ferelden, Orlais, and the Free Marches. Tevinter, the oldest human empire in Thedas, is a land ruled by powerful mages known as Magisters, a society built on slavery, intricate political maneuvering, and a deep, often dangerous connection to magic. Its capital, Minaret House, a colossal city of spires and ancient wonders, is confirmed as a major location, promising a visually stunning and narratively rich environment for players to explore. The Imperium's internal conflicts, its long-standing rivalry with the Kunari, and its unique magical traditions will undoubtedly play a crucial role in the unfolding narrative, offering both challenges and potential allies in the fight against Solus. Exploring this region will provide a fresh perspective on Thetis, revealing cultures and histories largely hinted at in previous installments. In this new chapter, players will step into the shoes of a brand new protagonist, a deliberate choice by BioWare to move away from the established heroes of previous games. Neither the Warden, the Champion of Kirkwall, nor the Inquisitor will be the playable character in Dreadwolf. This allows for a fresh perspective and ensures that the narrative can explore new themes and character arcs without being beholden to past decisions or relationships. The identity and background of this new protagonist are, as yet, largely unknown, but their journey will begin with a desperate plea. A crucial early plot point revealed through promotional materials is a message sent by none other than Varric Tethras, the beloved dwarven author and companion from both Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Inquisition. Varric, ever the pragmatist and a keen observer of the world's undercurrents, sends a warning to the protagonist, indicating the emergence of a new, profound threat and the urgent need for help. This message serves as the catalyst for the protagonist's involvement in the larger conflict, drawing them into the unfolding drama surrounding Solas. Varric's return is a welcome confirmation for fans, and he is expected to play a significant role, likely as a companion or a key non-player character, providing his signature wit, cynicism, and surprisingly insightful commentary throughout the adventure. His presence not only offers a familiar face in a new setting, but also provides a crucial link to the events of Inquisition and the lingering threat of the Dreadwolf. Adding to the roster of returning characters is Harding, the dwarven scout who served the Inquisition with unwavering loyalty and a perpetually cheerful demeanor. Harding's return is another welcome sight, suggesting that the Inquisition, or at least its remnants, will still have a part to play in the fight against Solas. Her expertise in reconnaissance and her steadfast nature will undoubtedly be valuable assets to the new protagonist. Her presence also hints at a continued connection to the events of Inquisition, reminding players of the lingering consequences of Solas's actions and the efforts to track him down. The inclusion of both Varric and Harding suggests a narrative bridge between the previous games and this new installment, providing continuity while also introducing fresh elements. The protagonist designation, or perhaps more accurately, their perceived status by Solas, is hinted at by the term Fenris. This ancient Tevinter word, meaning little wolf, is a term Solas has been known to use for those he deems insignificant, those who are not part of his grand design for elven restoration. It implies that the protagonist, at least in Solas's eyes, is an outsider, a minor player in a cosmic drama. This potential dynamic sets up an intriguing narrative arc, where the little wolf must rise to challenge the Dreadwolf himself, defying expectations and proving their worth against seemingly insurmountable odds. This framing immediately establishes the power imbalance and the immense challenge facing the player, making their eventual triumph all the more impactful. As the story unfolds, the narrative will delve deep into the intricate political landscape and internal conflicts within the Tevinter Imperium. This ancient empire is not a monolithic entity. It is a tapestry woven with feuding magister families, the oppressed masses, the ever-present threat of Kunari incursions, and the simmering tensions between traditionalists and reformers. The protagonist will undoubtedly be forced to navigate these treacherous waters, forming alliances, making difficult choices, and perhaps even inadvertently influencing the future of the Imperium itself. The internal strife within Tevinter could become a critical factor in the fight against Solas, either by providing unexpected allies or by creating further distractions and vulnerabilities that the Dreadwolf could exploit. The rich lore of Tevinter, previously explored in codex entries and supplementary materials, will finally take center stage, offering players a chance to experience its unique culture and challenges firsthand. Menret House, the aforementioned capital of Tevinter, is confirmed as a major location, promising a sprawling urban environment unlike anything seen in previous Dragon Age games. This ancient city, built upon layers of history and magical power, will serve as a crucial hub for the protagonist's adventures. Its towering spires, bustling markets, hidden cults, and political intrigue will provide a vibrant backdrop for the unfolding narrative. Exploring Minret House will not only offer a visual spectacle, but also a deep dive into Tevinter society, its unique architecture, its social hierarchies, and the pervasive presence of magic in everyday life. The city itself could hold ancient secrets relevant to Solas's plans, or perhaps even offer clues to stopping him. The sheer scale and complexity of Minret House suggest a deeply immersive experience, where every street corner and hidden alley might hold a piece of the larger puzzle. The implications of Solas's plan are staggering, and the stage is set for a truly epic confrontation. The return of beloved characters like Varric and Harding provides a sense of continuity, while the new protagonist and the Tevinter setting promise fresh perspectives and challenges. The narrative will not only explore the immediate threat of Solas, but also delve into the complex moral and ethical dilemmas surrounding his actions. Is the destruction of the current world truly justified for the sake of an ancient past? What does it mean to be a god, and what is the true cost of power? These are the questions that Dragon Age, Dreadwolf seems poised to explore, offering a compelling and potentially heartbreaking conclusion to a story that has been building for over a decade. The fate of Thedas, and indeed the very nature of reality, hangs precariously in the balance as we brace ourselves for the coming storm. The Dreadwolf is at the door, and the world will never be the same. This is just the beginning of our exploration into the upcoming game, and there's much more to uncover about the challenges and revelations that await us. The protagonist, whether a new recruit to the Inquisition or a fresh face entirely, will find themselves navigating a labyrinth of political intrigue and societal upheaval within Tevinter. This isn't merely a backdrop, but a living, breathing entity, rife with internal conflicts that will directly impact their mission. The ancient magisterium, the ruling body of Tevinter, is far from unified. Powerful magister families, like the Venatori, who we've seen before, vie for influence, their ambitions often clashing with the more traditional conservative elements of the Imperium. We might see the resurgence of the Black Divine, a figure of immense spiritual and political power within the Tevinter Chantry, whose pronouncements could sway entire regions. The very fabric of Tevinter society, built upon a hierarchy of mages, slaves, and free citizens, is strained. A growing abolitionist movement, perhaps fueled by the events of Inquisition and the increasing awareness of the plight of elves and other oppressed groups, could spark open rebellion. The protagonist may be forced to choose sides in these internal struggles, their decisions having far-reaching consequences for the stability of the Imperium and, by extension, the entire continent. Compounding these internal pressures, the Qunari, ever a looming threat, are firmly entrenched in the northern regions of Tevinter. Their presence is not merely a border skirmish, but a full-scale occupation in some areas, a relentless push for their philosophy of the Qun. The conflict with Tevinter, already a centuries-long struggle, is poised to escalate dramatically. We've seen the Qunari's relentless pursuit of their goals, their willingness to sacrifice anything for the Qun. Their dreadnoughts, massive warships, could be poised to strike at key Tevinter cities, while their Ben Hasrath, their intelligence and espionage arm, are undoubtedly sowing discord and gathering information within the Imperium. The protagonist might be caught in the crossfire of this brutal war, forced to make difficult alliances, or even to fight alongside one side against the other. The Qunari's ultimate objective remains the conversion of all to the Qun, and Tevinter, with its magic, its mages, and its individualistic culture, represents the antithesis of everything they believe. This ideological clash could erupt into a conflict that dwarfs anything seen before, with devastating consequences for all of Thedas. Adding another layer of mystery and potential danger, the Executors, a shadowy organization first hinted at in Dragon Age, Inquisition, are likely to emerge from the background and play a significant role. Their true motivations and origins remain largely unknown, but they possess immense resources and influence, operating across national borders and seemingly above the petty squabbles of empires. Their symbol, a stylized eye, has been seen in various locations, hinting at their pervasive reach. Are they simply observers, or do they have their own agenda, perhaps even manipulating events for their own ends? Their involvement could introduce an entirely new faction to the already complex political landscape, one that might be even more dangerous than the Qunari or the fractured Tevinter Magisterium. The protagonist will need to unravel their secrets and understand their objectives to prevent them from becoming an even greater threat. As is tradition in Dragon Age, the protagonist will not face these daunting challenges alone. They will gather a new group of companions, each with their own unique skills, backgrounds, and motivations. These companions will be more than just combatants. They will be integral to the narrative, offering different perspectives on the unfolding events and challenging the protagonist's assumptions. We can expect a diverse cast, perhaps including a Tevinter mage struggling with the Imperium's oppressive system, a Qunari deserter questioning the tenets of the Qun, or even an ancient elven spirit seeking to reclaim their lost heritage. The relationships forged with these companions will be crucial, their loyalty and their insights potentially making the difference between success and failure. Their personal quests will weave into the larger narrative, enriching the world and providing deeper understanding of the various factions and conflicts. The game will delve deeper into the lore of the ancient elves and the creation of the Veil, the magical barrier that separates the physical world from the Fade, the realm of spirits and dreams. This exploration will not be merely academic, it will be directly relevant to Solas's plans and the fate of Thedas. We will learn more about Arlothan, the glorious capital of the ancient elven empire, and its tragic downfall. The truth behind the Evanuris, the powerful elven gods, and their betrayal of Mythal, the All-Mother, will be revealed. The protagonist will uncover the true nature of the ancient elves' magic, their connection to the Fade, and the devastating consequences of Solas's act of creating the Veil, which shattered their world and imprisoned the Evanuris. This journey into the past will be essential for understanding the present crisis and for confronting Solas. Solas's motivations, while seemingly destructive, are rooted in a profound sense of grief over the loss of the ancient elven empire and a deeply held belief that the current world is a pale, broken imitation of what once was. He views the Veil not as a protector, but as a prison, a scar upon the world that has diminished both elves and magic. His desire to tear down the Veil isn't born of malice, but of a misguided attempt to restore what he believes was a utopia. He sees the modern world, with its squabbling nations, its diminished magic, and its suffering, as an abomination compared to the glory of Arlothan. He believes that by restoring the ancient world, he can bring back the true power of elvenkind and heal the wounds inflicted by the Veil. This conviction, however, blinds him to the catastrophic consequences his actions would have on the current inhabitants of Thedas, who would be utterly destroyed by the unleashing of the Fade. To effectively oppose Solas, the protagonist will need to understand his past as Herald, the Dreadwolf, the elven god of betrayal and rebellion. This understanding goes beyond simply knowing his identity. It requires delving into the complexities of his character, his history, and the choices that led him to his current path. Herald was not always a villain. He was a liberator, a trickster god who freed the ancient elves from the tyranny of the other Evanuris. His act of creating the Veil, while devastating, was initially intended as a desperate measure to imprison the warring gods and save his people from their destructive conflict. The protagonist will need to learn about the nature of the Evanuris, their immense power, and the true cost of their imprisonment. They will need to understand the burden Solas has carried for millennia, the guilt and the grief that have fueled his long-term plan. Only by truly grasping the depth of his motivations and the nature of his past can the protagonist hope to find a way to stop him, perhaps even by offering an alternative solution that doesn't involve the destruction of the world. The ultimate stakes of Dragon Age. Dreadwolf are nothing less than the fate of Thedas and the Veil itself. Solas's plan, if successful, would fundamentally alter the very fabric of existence. The Veil, which has for millennia kept the chaotic and dangerous Fade separate from the waking world, is on the verge of collapse. Its destruction would unleash a torrent of powerful magic and ancient entities, reshaping the world entirely. Imagine the consequences. The Fade, a realm of raw magical energy, of spirits both benevolent and malevolent, of demons driven by primal desires, would merge with the physical world. The laws of physics, as they are understood, would likely cease to apply. Cities would be swallowed by surges of raw magic, landscapes would twist and warp, and the very air would crackle with uncontrolled power. Ancient entities, long imprisoned or dormant within the Fade, would be unleashed upon a world unprepared for their power. The Evanuris themselves, the ancient elven gods, would be freed, their immense power and their old rivalries threatening to plunge Thedas into a new age of divine warfare. The spirits, currently bound by the Veil, would manifest physically, their desires and intentions, whether benign or malevolent, having direct and immediate consequences. Demons, from the lowliest desired demon to the most terrifying pride demon, would walk among mortals, their corrupting influence spreading unchecked. The very concept of life and death, as understood in Thedas, would be thrown into disarray as the boundaries between realms dissolve. The races of Thedas, humans, dwarves, Kunari, and even the elves, who would be profoundly affected by the return of their ancient magic, would be forced to adapt or perish. The world as we know it, with its nations, its cultures, and its history, would be utterly consumed and reborn in a crucible of raw magic. This is the cataclysm Solas seeks, and it is the cataclysm the protagonist must prevent. The choices made, the alliances forged, and the sacrifices given will determine whether Thedas endures, or whether it is utterly remade in the image of a forgotten past. The Dreadwolf's ambition, fueled by ancient grief and a longing for a lost world, places the entire future of Thedas in jeopardy, making Dragon Age. Dreadwolf, a pivotal chapter in the saga, one that promises to irrevocably change the world we have come to know. From the ancient whispers of the Fade and the shaping of Thedas by the forgotten gods, through the rise and fall of empires, the blights that scarred the land, and the constant struggle for power and survival, to the looming threat of Solas and the dawn of a new age in Dreadwolf, the Dragon Age saga has unfolded as a tapestry woven with magic, conflict, and the enduring spirit of its diverse peoples. This intricate chronology, spanning millennia and countless pivotal moments, reveals a world perpetually on the brink, shaped by both grand cosmic forces and the intimate choices of its heroes and villains. And that is the complete Dragon Age timeline.